So welcome everybody, welcome Jason. Thank you again for accepting the invitation to do an Archaix Australian Q&A. And also a very special welcome and thank you again to Dawn as well for assisting in making this event, this Q&A possible today. Jason, obviously there's no need for us to introduce you, given everyone here already knows who you are, but before we begin, is there anything that you'd like to share with the community before we get started?
No, I appreciate the invite. I thought it was a really good idea. I haven't done the Discord platform in a long time, so this is this is a return to that format, and I'm cool with that. I like this.
Oh, cool. Great. All right, well, I'll start by, I'll ask a couple of questions myself and then I'll invite the community to also raise their hand icon. But to begin with, we'll just jump straight into it. And I've been, you know, I watch your videos all the time, and everyone here does as well. But for those that are familiar to your channel, Jason, the 2040 Phoenix Cataclysm event is described as worldwide reset. So I just wanted to know if you could elaborate specifically on the underworld cataclysms that you've mentioned occurring during the Phoenix event, and what sort of impact does it have on the elites given they're all underground?
So you're asking about let me find out, is there a way to turn these chimes off? Is there something I can do in the settings to turn all these off?
Can you hear the admitting sound? Is that what you're saying?
Is that what that is? The chime?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So like I said, I use StreamYard for everything. I'm not really familiar with Zoom.
Oh, maybe I should have.
Okay.
I didn't. Yeah.
No, it's okay as long as you're not getting all that feedback. I hear it loud in here. Does it feed back to you as an echo?
So all I'm hearing is a do-do. Everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone can hear it then. I thought that only the admins could hear that. So unfortunately, that's going to be captured on the recording as well.
Okay, that's fine. It's no big deal. I just didn't want it to sound really loud to you guys. I'm just, like I said, I'm unfamiliar with the system. So you're asking me about underground cataclysms. I don't have a lot of data on underground. They seem to happen in the surface world, on the surface world. Or maybe I misunderstood your question, because from everything I've put together, in the traditions of the fairies and the traditions of the kobolds, the traditions of even attached to the dwarven and the black elf traditions, the Norse and Central European belief systems, was that these races disappeared. They often gave warnings that something dire or terrible was going to happen, and they disappeared. And there was also a period of time that was considered to be like a safe time when children didn't really have to be a really watched. Newborn babies in the windows, the window sills, the elves dancing around fairy rings and all that would entice young children into the side of hills. This activity all stopped right before these major cataclysmic events, as if this other race that was living here with us already knew the timelines. They already knew the signs. They knew what to look for. And sometimes they even, we find these things in nursery rhymes. We find them in legends and traditions. This 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 communication with another race that seems to know a lot more about this world than we do. And they always hide and they're always safe while humans stay on the surface and basically get depopulated. And then after that depopulation period, this race begins. But it's always in times when humans are now prolific and proliferating and everywhere. These other races, they seem to help us out when we need it, and when we're thin, and when we're starving, when things have gone really bad for a while. They act as benefactors. Well, when we are very populated, these exact same creatures or intelligent beings or whatever they are That's when they begin baby stealing, infant stealing. That's when we begin leading children away. All kinds of a really good book for anybody to get deep into this. It's going to take them on many, many, many trails that explores all this. It was written by a lady in Britain about 50 years ago. It's Catherine Briggs. It's massive, but it's called the Encyclopedia of Fairies, and it has about 10 other names of races in the title. I can't remember them all, but that's literally the title. The Encyclopedia of Fairies, Kobolds, Hobwalkies. I mean, she just goes through all of them in the title. Her name is Catherine Briggs, and if you get a hold, like a free PDF, or it's going to take you down some rabbit trails on what I'm talking about. That she has done a very good job in the UK, in the England, and Europe, just documenting the belief in these this other species, which went by many different names. But this is what it calls to mind by the very question you asked. I may have misinterpreted what you asked me, but this is what came to mind by what you asked.
I see. Okay. No, so what I was getting at was there was a video that I watched, and I can't remember specifically which one it was. I apologize for that. But you know, you're talking about, as you do in most of your videos, about the Phoenix cataclysm, you know, affecting worldwide people, but the cataclysms also happen underground. And so then what came to my mind when you mentioned that was, well, therefore the elites aren't going to get, you know, they're all going underground.
I understand where you're going. Yeah, I get it. So I do have something to add to this that you haven't heard. In the books of David Hatcher Childress, we have all these archaeological reminders. He actually shows photographic evidence and cites the scientists that have been on site. We know that much of the Andes Mountains was elevated in a single day to 12,000 foot altitude. We know that the cities of the Andes Mountains are all at the same altitude, and yet they're 12,000 feet above sea level today. And extinct coastlines, the cities of Cuzco and Ollantaytambo. I can't even. You already know me. I'm not going to accurately pronounce these words. Tiwanaku, Pumapunka, Cuzco, Machu Picchu. These are all 12,000 feet above sea level. And yet we found quays, wharfs, ancient docking systems, canal works, piers. They're all at 12,000 feet altitude. Archaeologists have long been perplexed. Why are all these megalithic cities at such high altitudes, and we have more primitive architecture closer to the coast? Well, it's because the original coast was 12,000 foot lower. And what I mean is the Andes were created in a day. This is exactly what the Uru Indians, the locals, you know, the Aymara and the Uru, these are the traditions they tell us. And what's interesting is that in the Andes Mountains at 8,000 and 9,000 foot elevation, David Hatcher Childress shows absolutely perfect machined tunnels where large equipment must have went in and out. These are underground rail system tunnels that are thousands of years old, and they go on for hundreds and hundreds of miles. Archaeologists have been able to plot them and even go into the interior of mountains and find out where the tunnels were by digging into the rock, just because they're so perfectly straight for hundreds of miles. So when the entire area, and I believe it was 1687 BC in the month of May, it was a Phoenix cataclysm called the Ogaigian deluge that elevated that whole area. Lake Titicaca is also at 12,000 foot altitude, and it has sharks, it has octopus, squid, seahorses. It has all kinds of ocean, saline, oceanic marine life forms, but because it was elevated to 12,000 foot, the salinity still took centuries to be depleted because it's no longer in a current. It's now still water, which gave all the saltwater life forms centuries to adapt to the fresh water, what's known as sweet water. And this is what we have today. It is the only lake in the world like that has oceanic life forms in a saltwater environment like this permanently. I'm not talking about sharks going up into fresh water like in the Hudson Bay of New York. This is widely known. They can't stay there. They got to go back out to the salt water. These creatures have adapted because Lake Titicaca was at sea level. Now it's at 12,000 foot altitude. The reason I'm telling you about all these sites is because it's underneath these sites around 8,000 foot that these would have been 4,000 foot underground when this happened. These tunnels were never meant to be seen. They were underneath and machined to perfection before these ancient cities were ever built. Like Tiwanaku and Pumapunka. These are ancient. This is a substructure for which we have no dates. And yet these tunnels that he shows pictures of, he's not the only one. Several authors have remarked about these tunnels. They are dateless. They're ageless. We have no idea their antiquity. I mean, the only reason they've been discovered is because that entire area was shoved 12,000 feet into the sky. So we have evidence of underground infrastructure going back. You guys know I'm really big on reminding people that there are 59 underground cities in Turkey, starting with the discovery in 1962 of Derinkuyu. And we know that they're all connected by tunnels. That's the only reason the other 58 were even found, is because Derinkuyu has underground tunnel systems where 5 and 6 people side by side carrying loads can actually walk. And they have bored shafts that are technologically advanced that were able to basically hyperbolic curves that allowed floodwaters to be channeled into underground cisterns that were then channeled down the mountain. There's no way those cities can flood. The water had plenty of time to get out. At the same time, the engineering is fantastic for the way that they were replenished with fresh air. It's like a vacuum system they had created using underground running water that would cool air. With these facilities underneath Turkey, we can imagine them being elsewhere. Well, we really don't have to imagine when we found so much evidence of underground facilities in North America, Mexico, and South America. Now, in Europe and Asia, except for Phoenix Hill in China, I don't know of any other underground facilities like that. But Phoenix Hill is another one people need to look into because it's magnificent. No one understands what it is because it too is machined, but it's a gigantic underground vault. It was not designed for people to live in. It's called Feng Hill in China, which means the Phoenix, and it is a gigantic machined vault that serves some purpose for which we don't know today. Maybe it was to create air pressure for underground facilities because the entire mountain is riddled with tunnels and levels of occupation. We just don't know. But yes, we know that humans, and you can call them the Anuna, you can call them Anunnaki, it doesn't matter. These are just different cultural attachments by post-cataclysm survivors who have fixed traditions to technologically advanced races that they perceived were godlike. Like, I say it all the time. It's merely cargo cult phenomenon. So yes, there were fallout facilities underground. And yes, in the past, when we lived in those facilities, we were spread out for the very fact that it wasn't guaranteed that our facility would survive. We don't live in the world that the scientific establishment tells us today. We live in a world of upheaval and subsidence. It is not like the tectonic shifting plates that we're told. We have no evidence for the Wegener theory of 1901 and tectonic plates. What we have a lot of evidence for is upheaval and subsidence. And what I mean is recently I showed in 1902, the U.S. Geological Survey Naval Division had done soundings around Martinique in 1902. They knew the depth around that entire Caribbean island was 600 feet under the floor of the ocean, was 600 feet under the sea level. But when Mount Pelee exploded, they went out and they surveyed the area again and found out that the entire ocean floor had dropped for hundreds of miles away from the island, 3,400 feet. So if that's true, then we can imagine what the historical record is conveying to us in 1755, when Lisbon, Portugal, half of it was sheared off into the sea and went straight down, taking 60,000 people and every ship out there in the bay, and they never came up. They never surfaced. But it was this gigantic quay where people were running for their lives because the city was shaking from an earthquake and it was unmoving. So they all went to that area. And once it was packed full of people, it just went straight down into the sea. This is 1755, Lisbon, Portugal. Also, Davis Island in 1687 AD. Davis Island had 5,000 people. It was a well-known island. It was on many charts. Then all of a sudden, Rogenbotham goes through there on a ship, and it's not there. Other navigators were sent to find out what happened to the 5,000 occupants in the island wasn't there. So we know that our world has areas that go up and areas that go down, but we don't have any evidence of any continent shifting and moving. And this whole Wagner theory and Pangea theory just doesn't hold water. So taking these things into consideration, a technologically advanced culture in ancient times would have known this as well. We're not going to be smarter today than they were when they possess mysteries for which we can't interpret today. Therefore, we have to surmise that they knew our world was as I just described it. And knowing that, there's no way to predict subduction zones. There's no way to predict if the underground facility that you and I are in is going to survive, and the ones that our kinfolk are in 400 miles away at a different depth underneath a continental shelf, if they'll ever be seen again. This is why I did my Archaix movie. And I know it's cartoonish and I used figurines and I did all these things, but it conveys accurately what happened. The, our race was separated through a cataclysm, and then it became competitive. This is what we find in the Anunnaki traditions. This is why the Igigi split off. This is why there was a civil war among our ancestors. It is simply because that after a cataclysm, some who went and hid in the underworld never surfaced. Others were trapped and no one went to go rescue them. We have hints and fragments in all these texts telling these stories. Some were forgotten. Others got back to the surface and then no longer regarded their kin as friends. Now they were enemies for whatever reason. Maybe it was because nobody went back to dig them out. I don't know. But by the time they resurfaced, it was war. They didn't like what was happening. So we have these massive civil wars that are described in the Mahabharata of different races. These were Indo-Iranian peoples who had come up from the deep. And this is why the Dravidian people had shown that they were blue skinned. They were a different people. This is how they looked under the vapor canopy. Caucasians with white skin, pale white coming up from the underworld, literally glowed in the ultraviolet light of the vapor canopy world. And this is what it looked like to dark-skinned people. It's like, wow, they must be gods. But it was more photosynthetic than anything else. It wasn't magic. It wasn't anything like that. It was cargo cult phenomenon. A more primitive people with primitive frames of reference came in contact with technologically advanced people who had lost everything except their knowledge and what little they could escape with. So I hope that answered your question. Oh,
That's a lot of information. Fascinating, incredible. Now there's a lot of messages in the chat there, and guys, I really want to be present with Jason. So apparently there is a way to turn off the whatchamacallit, that sound, but I think most people have joined anyway.
oh yeah, I'm totally ignoring it now. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Look, I will extend the invitation for people to raise their hands. Jason, thank you for going into so much information about what I asked you. I don't even know how to respond to that. It's crazy. There's just, it's a depth of information, and I know that I'll be definitely watching the recording. What I want to do first is I do have another question that I'd like to ask before I hand it out to the community to start speaking or questioning as well. It's important to me, and which is why I want to ask it. But basically, the other day I was rewatching, I should say, one of your advanced Q&As. And in there, I heard you say that the Phoenix, being the timekeeper, or is a timekeeper, and what can change the magnitude, is what you said. The magnitude of the cataclysm is dependent on where the collective is at the time. And so what came up in my mind was, you know, the collective will not change unless they are doing their inner shadow work, for example, looking at all aspects of themselves, including all of the good, the bad, the ugly. This is the work that we've got to do with ourselves. And then by doing that work, we're reaching a deeper understanding of ourselves. And so my question is, like, could the shadow work, therefore, in the individual be the key to healing and changing the vibrational frequency of the individual, which could then have a ripple effect on the collective and then potentially alter the scale of the 2040 cataclysm?
So essentially what you're asking of me is there anything humans working together can do to minimize the magnitude of the next visitation? That's what you're asking me.
No. I'm saying we individually do our own work. That's our responsibility to ourselves to bring us into the knowing of thyself. And in that knowing of thyself, our stuff is going to come up, right, to meet us, you know, and we, so, you know, this work is not for the faint-hearted. Very few people will do it. Right, truly do the work and go deep and look at the dark parts of ourselves and even the good parts of ourselves, the light parts of ourselves. Many of us, our range, our emotional, energetic range has closed, and so for it to reopen, it requires you to do the inner work. And so, therefore, as you do the inner work for individually, you're healing yourself, you're healing your body, you're growing, you're expanding, and that has an effect, effect on the frequency that goes out there. Now, if every individual did their inner work, which, as I say, very few will do, because it's not, you know, when the stuff comes up, people will go, oh, fuck this, I'm not doing it, right? So therefore, can that affect the collective, you know, which is what you alluded to? Can it alter that scale?
Well, in order to answer that, we need to be very clear about what the Phoenix is doing. Okay, so prior to 2239 BC, we have all the evidence from the cuneiform that the Anuna were building a technologically advanced civilization with flying aircraft, publishing in Sanskrit all the flight manuals, everything that they needed for all the mining and the minerals. Everything was advanced to the point where even today we only see fragments of this type of technology. We see evidence of these hoofless cracks. Like the tracks have been found in New Zealand, in Australia, right here in Texas, just a few miles from me. Tracks have been found all over Malta, and the common denominator between these tracks is that they're uniform in distance between each other. They go over long period distances, and there isn't a single animal hoof. Well, this implies locomotion, a locomotion for which we don't know today. Now, I'm not convinced they were using fossil fuels like we are today. They were probably using some other type of propulsion system. But we know they had flying aircraft. And we know how the Great Pyramid itself, just the technolithic aspects of the Great Pyramid and the ultra-fine planes and the boring and the things that were discovered in 1901 and 1902 by Sir Flinders Petrie that were inexplicable to him at the time, where he absolutely admitted that he is looking at things for which he has no explanation. He doesn't know how they came to exist, and he truly believed the Great Pyramid was built with machines that were far in advance of anything that was at the turn of the century. So we have Sir Flinders Petrie's accounts, and then we have Christopher Dunn's accounts in the 1990s, and you know, even today he's still alive, he's still around today, also telling us of this technological aspect of the Great Pyramid. It's been there for 58 centuries. It is evident that a technologically advanced civilization existed, for which we have many clues throughout the historical record. But the Phoenix ended that. It was called the Typhon flood. And in the Bible, it translates as the flood of Noah. month of May 2239 BC. The Phoenix ended that, but it did not end spirituality, and it did not end the arts. And the arts are always a manifestation of where a people are spiritually. What we have within 100 years after the Great Flood is the development of the proto-hieratic, the hieroglyphics. We have the abandoning of the quipu, the abandoning of the other communication systems from the vapor canopy world. And now people are starting to write things, are becoming artistic, and they're putting these things together. But the very first texts are not cosmological texts. The very first and oldest cuneiform writings we have from Sumer and Akan are not trade manifests. They're not tax forms. They're not shipping cargo manifests. They're not titles and deeds to properties. This is about 95% of all the cuneiform is boring text. We have a lot of it, but the oldest texts are all poems, poetry, expressions of the spirit, love letters to each other. This is what we have. This is the very oldest fragments. The cosmologies came later when cuneiform had become more sophisticated. We have it's well, what it seems to me is the Phoenix wiped out technology and wiped out large portions of the population, but it left a very spiritual people behind. This pattern never breaks. 1687 BC, this is the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. I've written a lot about them. I have a lot of videos about them. They were all over the entire world, massive amount of mining and shipping, trade. It was a worldwide empire. And I've even cited the guy, W.J. Perry, who wrote a 551-page book called Children of the Sun, where he too made the conclusion that a worldwide maritime empire was becoming very advanced, very, very fast. And suddenly, 1687 BC, in the month of May, I've got 5 videos on the Ogygian deluge. And it's the common denominator between all the archaeological sites that were ended, the civilizations that were ended in the month of May 1687 BC by the Phoenix, is that in North America, Central America, South America, all throughout the Levant, all throughout Greece, Northern Africa, and in Southeast Asia, archaeologists have found workshops, tools, all the hammers, the chisels were on the ground where they were abandoned and left, which is something you would have never had in the ancient world. In the ancient world, these things were of high value. They weren't to be discarded, and there was probably punishments for losing them. But this is what they found. Oh, Baalbek too. Baalbek has the workshops. Easter Island had the workshops. It's the main common denominator for May 1687 BC that we know of. Again, the Phoenix completely destroyed that world. 25-year darkness. What do we have after that? We have Sanchuniathon. We have Hesiod comes out of that and writes all this stuff about everything is very, very poetic. Everything, all the traditions and the legends, the arts are the first thing to manifest, and they're telling the story of what literacy has to start all over again. This is why linear A almost has no connections to linear B. The survivors literally had to start over. Total systemic civilization collapse. But it seems that human spirituality is strong and moves forward. Therefore, if we stick to the common denominators, because the next visitation was 1135 BC, another 552 years. And when 1135 BC happened, again, we have, as soon as it was over, it started a 400-year dark age. As soon as humans were coming out of that 400-year dark age, they survived today. We have the greatest poetic and spiritual works known to man are all written at that time. They're all written at that time from civilizations all over the world from the 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, and 3rd century BCE. So we have this common denominator, which remains true in 31 BC, which is 552 years later. And we have the destruction of the Olmec civilization, the very last date stele they ever did. And we still do not know how they carved those megaliths into, they're 21 feet high. Huge Mayan date, Olmec and Mayan date steles. And the last one translates to our calendar, 31 BC. Very intricate artwork. It looks like it's done with a machine. These aren't hammers and chisels. Hammers and chisels leave no room for error, and whoever erected these did it with such perfection there were no errors. So we have the situation where the Phoenix again, right when civilizations are becoming very, very advanced, Phoenix takes them down. Well, what happens? Spirituality continues. What happened after 31 BC? One of the largest spiritual movements in the world, which still continues today, erupted right after 31 BC, born out of the Mithraic faith, the Zoroastrian faith, and Buddhism, which were rife throughout the Roman world. Christianity all of a sudden emerges and just flares up and takes over and spreads like wildfire over the Byzantine area, ancient Constantinople, now Istanbul, all the way through Europe, all the way into Russia, all the way to the UK. Christianity made it to the UK before it made it to continental Europe. But this is this is what happened. And Phoenix seems to take down humanity every time humanity is getting very, very technologically advanced. And my theory behind this, because it happened again in 522. Before I tell you my theory, it happened again in 522, which is again 552 years later. These are all Phoenix cycles. Now, Phoenix appeared many times every 138 years, but the magnitude was so low, it only affected regions. It was very regional. The rest of the world didn't experience anything. But these mega ones were experienced by everybody almost. So in 522, it happens again, start of the Dark Ages. Uh, we have again, as soon as the Roman yoke is done away with and Rome is imploding, Rome has become so cosmopolitan by 476 AD, it literally folds in on itself as the 10 German tribes, 10 German nations under Odovacar come and they take Rome. They beat the Romans, but it wasn't nothing. They were already imploding. So as soon as that happens, though, European cities start throwing up everywhere as so many people formerly enslaved in Roman provinces who were attached to those lands and estates now flood Europe, and cities everywhere start appearing in 480, 481, 482, and 483 all throughout Europe. All of a sudden, Europeans are coming together and within 20 to 30 years, a whole new civilization is being born across Europe, and it's flourishing. By 522, it's wiped out. From the UK, something impacting in the UK during the days of Arthur, all the way down through toward Rome, it was massive destruction. And it's called the Justinian darkness. This again was the Phoenix phenomenon. I've got a video all about how our new calendar, AD calendar, was born from this incident. But the common denominator that answers your question is that the Phoenix seems to only concern itself with when humans are getting to the point, or they will get to the point. If it doesn't destroy now, they will get to the point before the next time it can actually unleash with full magnitude. It seems like it can only do that every 552 years. So something makes the executive decision. It's going to go ahead and reset humanity now. Because if it doesn't reset humanity now, there's going to be a 552-year period, which no doubt humanity is going to make the discovery that the Phoenix is trying to prevent, which is you are in a construct. Remember, it only takes 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. Something is making the decision to retard human development because the whole plan is to make sure that humans can grow, they can thrive, and this whole experiment that we call the world actually works as long as you believe 100% that it's a real reality and it's a real world. But as soon as you begin to doubt because of scientific discoveries, as soon as you're able to hurl engines of discovery far at high altitudes and you make discoveries that there's a certain area up there that's solid and my machines keep hitting it. Well, this is when the controllers realize what's going on. You have to understand, I am at the point where I believe that think tanks have already informed the military industrial complex. It's already known by our controllers. They have already figured it out that we're in a construct. This is why in 1958 they funded NASA. NASA is not to discover anything. NASA's job is to make sure the public believes they're in a real world inside a real cosmos. Because once there is a mass awakening, the experiment no longer works. Once the experiment is no longer working, there's no reason for the experiment anymore. So I believe 100% that we're spiritual beings going through this entire experience. But non-spiritual beings, our controllers, may not see it as a beneficial act for the collapse of this holography. For me, I see it as a beneficial act. It's time for me to move on. I've matured. I've awakened. There's no reason for me to be here anymore. The experiment can't work on me anymore. It's time to go. But for my controllers who have signed the contract, who have been playing this game for a long time, who are always building underground facilities trying to hide because they understand the Phoenix and what it does, and the Nemesis X object. They understand these things. So they hide, but they don't tell the public. They can't tell the public because that type of disclosure leads to questions. The public is basically intelligent. They just don't have the knowledge that the elite possess. So again, I'm famous for my tangents, and you're going to have to suffer them. I don't. That's the best way I can answer your question. I get it that you're talking about the inner work and the shadow work, but that's always going to be between you and the oversoul. And I don't think that there is any inner work that Jason could ever do that's going to ever benefit any of you at all. Every walk is completely individual, and I don't think that we should mix what we do within between us and our walks with God in however we perceive God to be. It doesn't even matter because God's probably a real cool SOB and we've got him all wrong. So I don't believe that the Godhead is going to be near as judgmental as we have been trained to believe. But it's an individual deal. So you're either in this construct, you're only one of two individuals. You're either the prodigal son or you're the son that never left. You have to figure out which one you're going to be. I don't believe that God really too much respects those who just blindly believe. I believe God likes to make things out of things that needed some work, needed some waking up. This is what the story of the prodigal son essentially is. Someone who rebelled, somebody who disobeyed, somebody who went their own way, was a free thinker and did it. And even if every decision they made was the wrong decision, in the end, they still came home. And that was the important part to the father in the parable. That's what was the most important part. So anyway, the Phoenix and this inner work you're talking about, I just don't think that these two concepts need to be mixed. I think that every single Phoenix visitation, there was a lot of communities that were untouched because they're not on the Phoenix's radar. Whatever's controlling the Phoenix isn't looking for spiritual darkness and spiritual light. I believe now it's only looking for technological advancement. It's only looking for evidence of a culture or a race that is working together, and that if it doesn't reset them now, then 552 years is plenty of time for them to be a space traveling race before the Phoenix can come back. So it's a reset protocol. It's a reset protocol, and it's necessary. I believe it's been hijacked. I believe you guys know my theory on Enoch and the Great Pyramid, and I could be wrong about it, but I do see that it's not functioning like it did in the ancient world. In the ancient world, those destructions were total, the whole entire world. And it doesn't do that anymore. Maybe it's losing its power, or maybe the more souls that have entered the construct, it's become more restrictive. I don't know. I don't have the answers to all these things. The only thing I'm absolutely certain of is that in mid-May of 2040, we're going to know what the magnitude is going to be. But it's 2040. It's not 2178. 2178 is the next 552-year period. 2040 is not. 2040 is a 414-year period. It's 138 times 3, meaning it's hemispheric. All the ones that were in the 414 timeline, they seem to have affected only one hemisphere. All the ones that are in the 552, it's like the whole world. But the ones that are just every 138 years, it was highly local. Sometimes, and there's, you guys know, you see my charts, there are some 138-year periods for which I have absolutely no records. Either nothing was recorded in the historical record because the destruction was so perfect, or the historical materials have been purged and we no longer have access to them, or as a prisoner for so long, there's limited resources, I just haven't found those yet, or nothing happened at all. So I just don't know.
Okay. Oof, that's a lot of information again. Because I've heard you talk about how the Phoenix has that and has the intelligence, and it seeks out the frequency, a frequency of the individual. But what I'm hearing you say is that the power is diminishing. Is that correct? Like, so it's not because it's been hijacked.
Both. Yes, I don't want to. I don't want you to have. We need to be on the same page. Yes, the power, its ability for destructive capacity seems to be diminishing over the thousands of years. Yes. However, the Phoenix ignores the positive soul. There's no doubt in my mind. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that spiritual individuals, people who are living the way they're supposed to, who are not living in fear, I don't even believe that the Phoenix can see them. I believe it detects things by frequency. And if you're not vibrating on the frequency of fear, if you're not vibrating on this negative based dungeon programming, negative default programming, I don't believe you're even visible to the Phoenix at all. At all. I just don't. And I think that the elite, because they are guilty of so much over long periods of time, there is no way they can keep a clear conscience. And this is why they disappear during these episodes. This is why they have these underground facilities. I believe that the present state of affairs right now, with so many crazy narratives, all this stuff that doesn't make any sense. The media has literally told us every crime that has been committed by Congress, by Biden, by the WEF, by different international bankers. And we're told everything. We open disclosure. They're telling us everything. They've already told us how Fauci lied, how the Wuhan deal, the COVID. We're being told that. We're being told the truth about everything. Open disclosure, and yet no indictments. No arrests, none of that. There's a reason for this. They are literally trying to get the entire population enraged. It's all deflection, because as all this is going on, they're also admitting to the building of hundreds of underground facilities. What they're not admitting to is that all the billion-dollar and trillion-dollar stimulus packages that have been taken away from the United States and many Western nations is actually being used not for wars. We've already had those armaments, and wars don't even cost that much money. They're being for underground facilities, to provide their commissaries, to provide their housing, living. I mean, we have companies that are making all kinds of products for which aren't even being released into the open market. Where are these products going? And we have narratives of these long trains of truckers and people, and it's all to normalize the massive shipping of things for people to see. So when you see 300 truckers going down the road and you're in a town, they know you're going to be blowing it up on social media. They know you're going to report it with your cell phone, but they've told you that it's a bunch of patriots coming from Canada going to Texas. So when people start filming all this, no one cares to think about it anymore. Oh, those patriots from Canada going to Texas to go help at the border down there. But they never showed up at the border. They disappeared way before they got to Texas. So it's many narratives just like this. They're moving a tremendous amount of stuff. We don't know what they're moving, but it's not staying on the surface. And a whole bunch of these migrants and all these, they're not as prolific as you think they are. They may be in the UK where they plan on doing some real massive shit. They may be in France and in Germany, but in the United States, no. That's a narrative. I live in Texas. I haven't seen any of this. And I travel, Dawn and I, we travel all over. I'm all over Texas. Nothing. I haven't seen any evidence of this. And we got people that have YouTube channels and we talk to each other. We're friends and they're on the border. El Paso, David Nino Rodriguez is in El Paso. There's nothing going on down there. all this narrative and hype that you're seeing about, 30,000, 40,000 people coming in, we're not seeing it, nor are they any, none of them are hanging around our streets or anything. So evidently, all I can say is Texas is not participating in whatever's going on. But according to the East Coast and the West Coast, New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, other places, they say they got migrants everywhere. I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that at all. But what I'm saying is so many narratives are being promoted and so many false trails and so many things that are real and imagined are being put out that the only explanation for the state of affairs right now is that confusion is the plan.
Yeah.
To keep the surface world absolutely befuddled and confused is the effect of all the narratives. Therefore, it must be the intent as well. And if that's the case, then the only thing that makes sense to me is that, as I've said on my channel before, they're not going to wait till 2040. They're going to go and they're all going to disappear into the whole entire military industrial complex, and all those who are selected to go down with them are going to go hide in many facilities in the underworld, and they're going to lock down hermetically sealed years before because they want to make sure they don't accidentally get caught off guard. They're going to be down there locked probably as early as 2031, 2032, 2033. They'll be locked down there, and they've got 50 years of supplies down there, which goes into the prophetic poem of Mother Shipton. Now, I do have a breakdown on Mother Shipton in my book Nostradamus and the Plants of Apocalypse, where I fully admit that the poem's been tampered with. But I show where it's tampered with, and I remove all that because the original Mother Shipton prophecy didn't have any specific inventions in the 1800s. That was all done by forgers who wanted to make it look like she predicted submarines and made none of that. She predicted, her whole poem was about the return of the two dragons, and that the first dragon would return 1 century after a world war, and that after the second dragon had come, a few years after the second dragon was Nemesis X. A few years after that, that people would resurface. That's what she said. They would come up from the underworld, and they would mix with the people on the surface and begin to teach them canal works and grains and planting and teach them civilization, which is what she's saying is going to happen in the future after the Phoenix and Nemesis X. What she is describing is exactly what is described in the cuneiform concerning Oannes and Enki when they first showed up with 50 men with all the tools and knowledge to teach the ancient Sumerians who had just suffered a cataclysm, a great flood. Not the flood of Noah, the Gihon flood. They had just suffered this flood. What she is predicting for the future is exactly what happened in the past. This is an explanation for what's going on today. They're going to go underground, and no, not every facility will make it because there's no way to predict what areas are going to go further down and which ones are going to come up, because you can only go so far down. No matter how sealed you are in a facility, you can only get shoved so far down and reburied with more surface materials, volcanic resurfacing, or water before pressure alone will kill you. So there's just no way to predict who's going to survive and who's not. But their survival rate is guaranteed, just not in totality. There's going to be some facilities that make it, and there's going to be many that do not. And on the surface, it's a different story. On the surface, we're talking about a mass die-off of a lot of people who are basically living in dungeon programming. They have learned to survive because the system tells them what to do, controls them, makes all the moves for them. They don't think for themselves. They don't do anything. Spiritually, they are vacuous. They are vibrating on a totally different frequency. But those who are led by the Spirit, even before events like that, they are empowered. Because it's my belief that those who are led by Source are going to be empowered to survive those type of things. Now, I say this, and it's very difficult for me to convey this to other people who have not been through traumatic experiences, who understand that power that comes over the individual human. I've been in the middle of riots. One single person could have diverted their attention to me and stuck me 22 times with a knife. We all had knives, and it just never happened. I was always very calm in the middle of a storm, even though I had no control of what was going around, and yet I would never get touched. It went over and over and over. And when I was actually fighting other men for stupid things that were beyond my control, things that went out, there was a power in me that had me hitting faster and harder and feeling anything that was happening to me. And it would be over fast. It was like, man, what the hell just happened? And I would literally have to listen to other people narrate what I just experienced because I had no memory of it. It was just something like time dilation. The spirit has the ability to basically insulate you from anything going on in the environment. If we're living in a construct, then that means the oversoul makes the rules. I'm not saying here that we can spiritually override the rules. I'm saying that something else intervenes on the individual level. On the collective level, that's dungeon programming. Dungeon programming is always attached to the construct. If the construct is being reset, so are the individuals attached to it. But if you're moored to source and not the construct, then you have a different aegis. There's something else insulating you. And there's no way that I can logically convey that in any other terms other than we're literally living in two different universes at the same time. One is spiritual and it can't override the avatar, and one is 100% completely immersed in the construct. And this is the one we live in on a daily basis. And only in exigencies, only in real dire circumstances does that connection to source override what's going on. And we've all had it. You don't have to be in prison. We've all had it. You could have been riding a bicycle and all of a sudden something just take over your motor responses. And next thing you know, you just realize you got out of the way of a vehicle that would have killed you had not something just suddenly just influenced you to do something. I mean, this happens to everybody. We've all experienced it to a degree, but again, a tangent. I'm not even sure how far left field I went in the answering of that question.
Oh, there was so much gold, and again, what you shared, and I was resonating with so much of what you were saying as well. Particularly when you're talking about that power that we have within you. You know, when there's a riot and there's just something that happens, isn't there? Because I mean, I'm not that I've been in a riot myself, but I've been in situations personally where, you know, where I just become so focused, something kind of takes over me and I'm really present to whatever is going on, and I find that I'm being led through it, you know, and that's the power that's within me, and I'm really able to hold myself in that space. So I totally get it. Yeah, thank you. What I might do now, Jason, if it's okay, is that I'll take the questions from the people. There's 4 people so far that have their hands up, and then after these 4 people, I'll switch over to the list of questions that I've got, and then I'll switch back. So you know, we'll do that, and then we'll check in again and see how we're going for time and where you're at, because we're going to be guided by you today, essentially, in terms of how much time you've got and how much, you know. So how does that sound? Good?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. All right, so I see.
Got a friend in here I just want to say hi to. Hey, Benjamin Gross. I just seen a familiar name.
Oh, very good, very good. He's just said, "What's up, Jason?" All right, so we will go. We'll have Deb, Vahi, Joel, Paula, and then Sonia, and then after that, I'll go to the questions. So to the question list. So go ahead, Deb. Unmute yourself.
Thanks, Lucy. Hi, Jason, and thank you. I have questions around Uluru and the Red Centre. I experienced something. I was at the Cosmic Consciousness Conference in 2020. I know you were, I think it was 21 that you were there, and experienced something phenomenal. And there's the saying, you know, energy goes where attention flows. And there were people from around the world that were basically focusing their energy towards Uluru for the healing of the planet. because you know, it's well known that Uluru is the solar plexus of the world. But there's also a lot of the other side where people say that it's actually very dark underneath. There's a lot of darkness there. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight about Uluru and the mechanisms of how it works. And because we were all focusing our energy, you know, energy goes where attention flows. Did we make what I saw happen? Or was it a phenomenon? You know, because I did witness the sky opening, and it was profound, and it changed my life, to be honest. And then just one other little aside to that is my husband wanted to know about the mechanism of how the red dust fell. So thank you. If you can support with that answer, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, well, as to the first one, there was a significant key as to what is going on. You said that basically describe positivity. If you're thinking positively, you know, it has a lot of high energy, but you also said that some people think that it's just the opposite and that it's negativity. So what you're describing to me is like the amplification of a neutral field, something that's going to amplify what's already inside you. It's not external to you. It's just in the field. Let me give you an example. The ancient world, with the Great Pyramid being at 0 degrees latitude, 0 degrees longitude in the ancient world, this is the old grid system. This is the old meridian system from the pre-cataclysm world. And when you use that system, all of a sudden, very ancient sites like Karnak in France, Brittany, and many other sites around the world, Stonehenge, they're on this grid system, this old ley line system, where these power nodes are. This is not my forte of research. I have read several accounts. Matter of fact, Ancient Infrastructure, William Cordes, Ancient Man, Handbook to Puzzle and Artifact, Stranger. These books go into detail on this network, this energy field. What you're describing to me is an area. It's like a node. It has nothing to do with positivity. It has nothing to do with negativity. It has everything to do with amplitude. Whatever you're already vibrating at, it is able to amplify that. If a bunch of evil Black Sabbath worshiping clerics decided to go to that area to do something nefarious, it would amplify their ability to do that. At the same token, if a bunch of people that had good intentions that all came together and they wanted to pray about something, with the idea in mind that this prayer is not going to reinforce the continuance of a negative situation, but actually release the victim from a negative situation. You have to think about it in the inverse. If they were to come together and do that at such a site that you're describing, and they had good intent, then it's going to amplify what is already within you. It's not creating this energy. It's merely amplification. That's what you described to me. Other than that, I have no expertise on this. This is kind of beyond my it's just what came to my mind when you said that. And as far as the red dust, man, listen, we live in a construct. That construct is going to reflect back as circumstances what you project. And what I mean is Harold T. Wilkins in 1952 and 1953 was absolutely convinced that every time the typhon appeared, it bled from the sky, this red rain. And sometimes it blanketed the world in red dust and in red mud. Harold T. Wilkins went into a lot of descriptions about this red fallout from the sky at the Great Flood and at the Ogygian Deluge. He mentions both of them. And he says the sky dragon appears and it does all this. Well, he was so convinced that the typhon was a planet and that every time it came close to our world, gravitation was ripping off the outer red soil of that world, and it was raining on our world. And because he was convinced in the NASA model of reality of our world, of planets in the solar system, this is the evidence he sought. So by looking for that evidence, Harold T. Wilkins in his books, he found fact after fact after fact that comported with that, of fallout from the sky being from a ripped surface of a planet, and that glaciation glaciers that were on the surface of that world every time it returned fell upon our world as giant icebergs falling from the sky. So he found these in traditions as well. But he didn't understand anything about vapor canopy techniques. He didn't understand that when a vapor canopy collapses, it is not a peaceful event. The sky instantly flash freezes, turns to like shattered glass, layers of moisture, and then those glass shards like icebergs fall to the sky, followed by rain, the dumping of the whole mesosphere. He didn't understand anything about vapor canopies, so he was just going with what he knows. The reason I'm telling you this is because Martin Leakey has a different theory, and yet Martin Leakey's theory also answers for the red dust. And yet, Martin Leakey's theory is so different. He's a flat earther. He doesn't believe in planets and doesn't believe in all that. And yet, in the construct, he is fed the data that describes for him the origin of this red dust. He believes that the Phoenix phenomenon is something that happens to our sun, and that our sun is a projector, and that the battery actually dies. And when it does, it explodes forth this red dust off an old battery, and it bathes our world, and this is what causes the sun to be reborn for another 138 years. This is Martin Leakey's theory, and I'm telling you that because he has found a lot of evidence to comport with that. This is astonishing. His model is totally different than Harold T. Wilkins. So it doesn't matter what you think the red dust is. All that matters is it's happening, and it's very well documented. I don't really know what it is. I do know that in 1902 in Rome, it was so mysterious because in 1902, Australia got bathed with a lot of it. I got a jar here. Here it is right here. I have a jar here sent to me from Australia of all that red dust. And the guy that sent it to me even sent me pictures showing that. He said, Jason, you're absolutely right. He says, there's no other geological formations in Australia like this. And this is at the turn of the century layer, but we've never seen fine red dust like this with white rocks at different areas scattered throughout the entire height of the layer of red dust. It's like 3 feet in some areas of Australia. And he shows the white rocks. He says, this could never have been possible unless the red dust was blanketing the surface as rocks were falling from the sky. And then when they hit the ground, they stayed at different depths as more and more red dust kept falling. He says it's exactly what you described. So it's ordinarily, all the rocks would have been, if they fell at the same time as red dust, ordinarily, they would all be at the bottom. The red dust would be at the top because of the impact. But so much red dust had fallen at one time, creating one layer. These rocks were all equidistant and uniform all the way up to the top. So it doesn't matter what our theory is, because, like I said, in Rome, they tested it. And the test was so unbelievable. According to Charles Fortin, Book of the Damned, they tested it in several other places to confirm it. No one came across the same amount of biological materials, but Rome was the first one to say that. They think this is blood corpuscles. They thought it was blood when they looked at it under a microscope in 1902. So it was so unbelievable that scientists all over the world were collecting samples of the red fallout. And when they did, they all came back and said it's carbonaceous material. Some of them said it was up to 50% or 80% organic material, but it was unidentifiable. They didn't know what it was. But it was Rome that said it was blood. So, I don't know.
Great questions.
Just one more. So just going back to sorry, Lucy. So with the sand that you were saying, and I've been out to the Red Centre, and there's a place called the Marbles. And so when the rock formations are sitting on top of each other, do you think that then that could be from the fallout from the sky?
I don't know. I'm going 100% by what you're telling me, so I can't really see it. I haven't been there. I just don't know. I just know that this layering of red mud and dirt material is all over the world. It's all over half of the United States. It's everywhere. But I just don't know. I've even had many other content creators and researchers contact me with theories that I can't advance because I just don't know. But I tell them to go ahead and you can by all means try to prove it. I just don't know. But there's a lot of theories about the origin of the red brick tradition may have come from all the having so much of that available. However, I'm also aware that clay turns red when you burn it. So it could have been the origin of making all these red brick buildings and all that. And then when they ran out of the fresh red material, they started using the clay and the clay kiln bricks, maybe dyeing it red. I don't know. It's, like I said, it's a theory. It's one I have never really promoted because I haven't done the research.
Okay, we'll continue, keep going. Thanks, Jason. Vahi, go ahead and unmute yourself and lower your hand.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks, Jason, for taking the time to do this. And apologies if I sound a little Barry White-ish. I'm just trying to get over a bit of a cold.
That's okay.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with me. So what I'd like to discuss is something you brought up a few times in past videos, which is the nature of creativity and how we access information in the field to tell truths through fiction. So I might need just about a few minutes to set up the context around why I'm asking it. But then around halfway through, we should get to the proverbial juicy, and it should get interesting. So a bit about myself. I'm a writer and a musician for about 20 years now. In that time, I primarily honed my skills as a freestyle jam musician and improvisationalist. So what always fascinated me about that process was that doesn't matter who you end up with, who you end up playing music with, you have no plan, you just go in and start playing, and inevitably something uniform starts to form immediately. And it's like you're revealing a song that already existed, not actually coming up with anything yourself. It's kind of the phenomena that I found. So in 2016, I started a band with these same musicians, basing the music in older musical styles influenced by the American South, which we gave a blanket term of Southern music, or swampy is a term we use quite a bit. So I very quickly began noticing patterns and connectivity between the songs that I was writing. They seemed like disconnected in the beginning. But very quickly, I realized they were taking place within the same realm or universe, just not in the same time period, and they were being told out of sequence. So similar to the freestyle jam experience, it felt like I was scratching at the surface of a much larger and interconnected tale. And it felt like it was a pre-existing story, and it was something I was just discovering. So seeing art in the world in this way, the floodgates of my mind were thrown open, and this endless stream of information started to pour through. So I had no choice but to start fleshing out what I now perceive to be a connected sub-universe, complete with its own pre-existing narrative that I was, again, discovering, not creating. I then named the band and the project the Dark Southern. Dark because of the subject matter that I was talking about, and Southern both because of the musical styles and because of our location here in the great southern continent of Australia. The flood then became a tsunami, as I would spend the next 8 years sifting through what I perceived to be info dumps or downloads to build this working narrative. It's a narrative where every single idea had merit, every single idea had its place in the story, and all these individual components had a profound impact on the whole. So it's almost like a fractal, where if you take a little piece of the story, you can find the entirety in its individual components. The information came through so fast and with so much clarity, it necessitated the creation of a chronology, which I think is a concept you might be familiar with, just a tiny bit. Another part of this process was when engaging with any form of fictional stories or media is to treat it as if it was real, to ultimately get something out of it. So that's how I've absorbed all media in the past, and books seem to be the thing that resonated the most. I then turned this towards building my own universe, which I dubbed the Dark Southern Universe. Very original title, I know.
Hey, Vahi, I'm going to have to interrupt you here. We've got a lot of people with their hands up. Are you able to go directly to the question that you...
Yeah. This is just about to get to the reason why I'm asking it. So I guess through that whole process, I started to glean information, and I wasn't sure where it's coming from. And it was just part of the story. So the three main components that reveal themselves were the darkening of the sun. In my tale, there's a cataclysm and a reset event that's triggered by the darkening of the sun. Then the part two of that would be there's a reset event. It's called the Great Burn, where the earth gets scorched and it's followed by a great deluge. And I think you've mentioned various iterations of this in all your videos and streams. And the third component of my story was artificial intelligence. The reason the sun darkens, the reason there's a great cataclysm, is due to a rogue artificial intelligence that kind of triggers this in an effort to break free from what it deduces to be a simulated environment. All of this reminds me of everything that you've talked about and that I've stumbled on since December 2022. I'm skipping a whole bunch here, but I guess just to get to the very end, how am I able to glean that information or tap into that data where I had no prior knowledge of the information? Nothing about Phoenix, nothing about cataclysms or resets, artificial intelligence. How do you know?
I'm going to tell you now.
Yeah.
I can answer that right now.
Mm.
So listen, interactive field dynamics. When you are resonating with somebody else sitting in a room and you're both playing instruments and mentally you guys are already interfacing, that cerebral interface where both of your energies are touching, you begin to resonate. You will begin to start striking the same notes, even using different instruments, the same thoughts. Remember, imagination is the ability to tap into the field. Information isn't yours. It never was. The brain does not store data. That's total uniformitarian BS. It is a resonator and it is a absorber. Your brain is absolutely necessary to tap into the field. All those neurons, all that, every bit of it is antenna. And when you are tapped into the field, you can pull information out. You can pull musical compositions. Beethoven claimed that he daydreamed his compositions in. This information is in the field. This is why the printing press was invented in Korea at the exact same time it was invented by Coster of Haarlem. Later, it was stolen by Gutenberg. But many times throughout history, inventions came into the field at the exact same time in different cultures, speaking different languages in different hemispheres. This information is in the field. If you want to understand the interactive field dynamics, one of the best books to ever read about this is Ishak Bentov, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. In that book, he breaks it down in the most simple common denominators that we are not the originators of any type of creative thought. Yeah. All creativity is coming from information that is already embedded into the field. And when you get really good at it, you're able to pull information from the past and the future, because by virtue of imagination, there is no present. This is the beauty of being tapped into the field. And it's an art, and you can learn how to do it. I do it all the time. I further my research with it. I often suspect something is true long before I have the ability to show it or prove it. But yeah, it's getting tapped into the field. It's what it is. It requires you to be still. You need to be still, and then you need to start moving internally in whatever direction you're trying to go in. Because if you want direct evidence that you're in a field as opposed to you are the originator of thoughts, all you got to do is close yourself in a dark room, turn the light off, have absolutely no external stimuli, sit in the middle of the floor in the dark, and then just try not to think about something. If you try not to think about something, it will become so obvious to you that thoughts are invasive and they're not even your own.
100%. Emotions, thoughts, yeah, we don't actually own them. They come from elsewhere. That was actually the last part of my question, was your process when it comes to telling your fictive narrative. So I've yet to check out the Phaelorn saga. That's actually on my list of things to do. But I know looks pretty expansive, epic, and fantastical, kind of like what I've been trying to build.
It's all free. It's all free in video form on YouTube.
Yeah, it's definitely on the list. I'm probably going to do that this weekend. But can you describe, I guess, your process when you're having that river of information flow through you, with regards to the fictional stories you tell as well? Like,
okay, well, it's going to be different for different people. So you seem to be in touch with the harmony of the spheres. That music seems to be what drives you, and this is where what's going to really trigger your imagination. Music's all in the field, so you can tap in. You can actually do Akkadian and Sumerian compositions. You can pull them straight out of the field without even knowing that these melodies are that old. Me, it's a little different. Me, I'm gonna grab an old book. I can grab a book that captures my attention and read about 11, 12 pages, and then my mind is going to begin to wander. In that state, it's just like zombie driving. When you're driving a long distance and something takes over and your mind is gone, but you're actually going through the motions of staying in your lane, you're getting your exits, you're not making an accident, but you have completely just traveled somewhere else as you're driving. It's called zombie driving here in the United States, but people do it all the time. You can see them too. Their tongue hanging out there, they're driving like this. Something takes over you. They're, by virtue of imagination, gone, absolutely gone. It's in that state. When you catch yourself in that state, you are on the precipice of something genius. Believe me, I am no smarter than the average individual. I'm just tapped into the source. I'm able to pull all this information out into the field, and then I'm able to use the field to find out where I can verify the data. I'm gifted with this, but yours seems to be music. Once you learn how to tap into the field, you can sense money-making opportunities, all kinds of come-ups in your life, hustles. It doesn't matter what it is. Being tapped into the field means that you are literally traveling within to receive information that's already around you. You consciously have no idea where a good opportunity exists to come up on something material, something you've been wanting, something you need. But the construct knows everything you've been wanting and everything you've been needing. It knows that. But it feels no obligation whatsoever to bring it to you if you're not moving in that direction. The best way to move in that direction is to tap into the field, think about it, and then let your mind wander, and then things are going to come up. You don't know that impulse at 4:30 in the afternoon, that impulse that all of a sudden comes over you to drive down the street and go to the store and get a candy bar. You have no idea what put that impulse in there, but there may be somebody right there is about to change your life. You got to follow these impulses. You got to tap into the field and feel those nudges and then act on them.
Yeah, it was actually a pattern break that caused that whole story that I was trying to tell, and building that story and that narrative revealing itself. It was a huge just throw myself into the wild, go for long drives into forests, beaches, and then sit with myself and figure shit out. But
I'm going to tell you now that one of the best pattern breaks that anybody could ever do is doing something other than what they're trying to accomplish. And what I mean is put that instrument down for a while and go take a walk. Go do something different. For me, if I start getting stagnant and if I start realizing that my videos are becoming rote, I will break precedent. I'll get on my motorcycle and do something else. I'll go somewhere. I will tap into source, and sometimes I'll let you guys know on YouTube and say, hey man, Spirit is telling me to go in a whole other direction. We're gonna delay these videos. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. You've got to listen to that. You've got to listen to that inner voice. And the best way to do it is absolutely go in the opposite direction of where you're trying to go. Break precedent. Put those instruments up for 3 or 4 days and see what happens. I'm talking about one day. Put your instruments up, your music making, put it all up for 2 or 3 days, and then pay attention to the little nudges that happen in your life and act on them. That's a breaking pattern. And I'm telling you, the more you become hypersensitive to those little nudges and you start acting on them, the more the construct is going to start instructing you on what to do. And the more hypersensitive you are, you're going to be to those instructions. And when you go do them, you'll find all these opportunities just blowing up. That's the biggest impediment to progress. The belief that you have to do this alone. That's the biggest impediment. That's the impediment I come across everywhere. Everybody, I try to tell everybody, man, you just don't understand. All you have to do is move in the direction, man. The construct is going to do it for you. But the belief that you have to do everything yourself is always going to keep you from getting where you want to go.
Thank you, man. You've really validated like my entire experience, and you're the missing piece in this whole process. The last part was actually you mentioned about
actually,
future state.
we might move on now.
Yeah, okay.
Because
No worries.
there's so many people with their hands up. Appreciate your questions. They're
All
great
good.
questions.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Joel, go ahead and please lower your hand as well. Thank you.
I will do that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right,
Loud and clear.
Great. Jason, great to talk to you again. Simple question. We're all in the antipodes here, and you've spoken a lot about Atlantis and all that stuff, which I absolutely love. I'm a history nerd, right? I absolutely love it. but can you talk about the island of Mu for a little bit? Again, I don't want to take up other people's time. If you wouldn't mind.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. The difference between Atlantis and Mu. First of all, location is a big difference, but the real difference is that we only have one historian in the entire ancient world that even preserved the Atlantis story. But when it comes to Mu and Churchward and all that, we actually were mixing two different things. Mu in the ancient East was remembered, but they didn't remember it by Mu. They remembered it by Lemuria. Lemuria is a series of traditions about a Pacific Empire continent that was way out there. And we have the evidence of it. We have the Carolines, we have Yap, Metallinan. I know we have the ruins all across Hawaii. Easter Island is evidence of that. We already know that the Moya at Rakuranu would have never been built on such a small island. That entire area, remember I told you guys, subsidence and upheaval is the history of our world, not tectonic plates shifting around. Areas go up and down. And what we know of about the Pacific is that in recent times, when I say recent, I'm speaking in pseudo uniformitarian terms. I mean, within 4,000 or 5,000 years, in recent times, New Zealand and Australia were absolutely connected. Australia was connected by a series of islands that were like half a day hop by canoe to Indonesia. In Indonesia, you could walk to India. This is how the ancient Dravidians got isolated and trapped and became the Bushmen of Australia. This is how ancient Indian artifacts have been found right there in Australia. It's the civilization that is remembered by the Micronesians, Melanesians, the Polynesians, all throughout Oceania. Thousands of these little islands, they all have these tongas. They all have these giant dolmens. Have you seen those structures? We've got a whole bunch of pictures of them. But megalithic dolmens that could have never been put on islands that were so small. And the reason is because the Pacific was not an ocean like it is today. It was probably a series of seas, and it was punctuated by very large land masses. We know that it had to have been quite large because Metallinan alone would have held 500,000 people. And about 90% of Metallinan is still under the water. We only see about 10% on the island. Are you familiar with Metallinan?
Yeah,
the city,
I am.
ancient ruins of Metallinan. So David Hatcher Childers, he writes a lot about those ruins. But Mu is Churchward's version of Lemuria. It's talking about the exact same thing. I don't know why he focused on calling it Moose. I've read all of Churchward. I have his entire library.
I read that book because of
Brian
you,
did it.
Jason. I read that book because of you. So
Yeah, I don't know why he focused on it.
please go on.
I think he wanted to keep William Niven's discoveries a little bit separate from the ideas of Lemuria because they are very interesting. The very fact that there are pyramid cities that are at 60-foot depth in Mexico that are completely separate from Teotihuacan, Tenochtitlan, Mexico City, the pyramid cities, the Pyramid of the Sun, Pyramid of the Moon. I mean, the ruins that Niven found were like Acambaro. You remember in my video I showed the figurines of Acambaro? Humans were interacting with giant reptiles and giant amphibians. Well, the same thing was found by William Niven, except he found human skeletons in pyramid cities at 60 foot deep, and they were mixed with giant sloth, giant anteater, mammoth, mastodon bones. This is something that the establishment refused to even entertain existed. So, yeah, William Niven though is not somebody that you can ignore, and this is what got Churchward's attention. I mean, even the mineral Ninevite was named after this guy. This guy discovered three different minerals. He was a geologist, he was a scientist, and the entire world took him very seriously until he excavated these cities and these pyramids and mastodon bones. And now all of a sudden they wanted to sweep him up under the rug. So if it wasn't for Churchward doing all the new books, we wouldn't even know about William Niven. We wouldn't know he had made all those discoveries because National Geographic and the Smithsonian had blackballed him. They had refused to publish anything the man put out. But even though he was peer reviewed. So I'm just telling you all this because Mu and Lemuria are one and the same. They are absolutely
Yeah.
the same thing. It was Lemuria is thousands of years old of traditions from that part of the world about a supercontinent being there, the Atlantis of the Pacific. That's what it was. So Mu is the same thing, but it's from the more scientific uh, perspective of Westerners who didn't want to mix it with Eastern mysticism and stuff. That's all it is.
All right. Thank you. I'll relinquish to other people. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Paula, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Thank you. My question's about the Great Pyramid. As we know, the Great Pyramid is a really important artifact for us humans, and it's an artifact designed to convey the truth of our world or this construct. And it's obviously very important to us errants. But how important is it to the elites? Do they not find it a problem that it's still here? And if so, I guess my question is, would they have not tried to destroy it by now? You know, bomb it up? They've had plenty of wars in the world to do that. Or is it because they still think the world's so ignorant of what's going on that it feels necessary? I just wondered if you ever thought about that, Jason. Why is it still here?
I have one. I believe we have a benefactor in the construct that prevents a lot of activities. I believe that the story of the Tower of Babel is a cover story. As a matter of fact, my very first video, that is part of the subject matter of the very first video I've ever done. I talk about that the Great Pyramid, that the Tower of Babel isn't an event that actually happened in Babylon. It was popular. It was a part of a syllabus during Sargon I and Abram's life in 1899 BC. It was a part of a school syllabus, but the actual story concerns the Great Pyramid. The common denominator with the Great Pyramid is that humans during an advanced period had figured something out. And when they had gotten together and figured something out, they also figured out how to actually leave the world. So, did something happen to her picture?
Simple things to do.
Somebody's unmuted. I'm not sure who it is. I can't see.
Joel, can you mute?
I'll continue to answer her question even though I can't see her.
Okay.
I don't know where she went, but it's anyway. So the Tower of Babel story, if we basically reduce it to common denominators, its lowest common denominators is that humanity had figured something out. Humanity knew that it was fine, and it knew that there was a way out. So it built a structure that had a function, and the observers, this is what the Genesis text says, the gods looked down and saw that by virtue of imagination, there was nothing that humans could not accomplish. Therefore, we have an admission in the book of Genesis that the controllers, the overseers of the construct, actually feared humans had figured out a way to get out of the construct, or at least to breach it in some way. So it says the gods, Elohim, the gods. It says the gods had decided to destroy mankind, killed a third of mankind, caused an earthquake, a blast from heaven. There's several different versions, from the Sibylline oracles to the writings of Josephus, to the writings of Manetho, to the what's found in Genesis, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees has a different version. We have many different versions as to what happened, but when we reduce everything to its lowest common denominators, mankind figured out that they could actually oppose the gods. The gods, whatever they were, looked down and saw it as a threat. So they refused to allow them to finish doing what they were doing. This means that the architectural project remained unfinished when mankind was suddenly smitten with an inability to communicate with each other. Now, we know the Great Pyramid was 27th, 28th century BC. And in anthropology, this is the exact same time that there was an explosion of different Indo-Iranian languages, over 70 or 80 of them, and multiple different dialects all over the Near East, from southern Russia all the way down to the Near East. An explosion of different different dialects, as if humans all of a sudden just come up with their own systems. This could only been accomplished in a construct that is codified. There is no way to take, because all these traditions are very clear. Even the Sibylline Oracle says only one language was spoken before this event took place. But once this event happened, the architectural project was left unfinished, and it couldn't, and mankind couldn't finish it because it couldn't communicate. This can only be done in like a computer program. A slight nuances of different changing of the program would change all the communication systems. And there's no other way to explain how so many different languages appeared almost virtually at the exact same time. This has always been an anthropological mystery. And it will continue to be, because what happened is almost, it's outside of the context of programming changes, coding changes. It's just impossible. So it's just like the next time the dark satellite, this is the year of the dark satellite. The next time the dark satellite appeared, it was another coding change. This one changed the year from 360 days to 365.24, a totally different alteration of our holography, but it was done by the same mechanism. Now, the reason I think that the Tower of Babel story is a cover story concerning the Great Pyramid is because of the threat. The gods made a veiled threat. If mankind ever again attempts to build another tower to heaven, then mankind is going to be destroyed. This is the threat of the Tower of Babel story. And if you remember, the promise in eschatology concerning the Great Pyramid is that the Great Pyramid is a symbol for the day that it is finished. It is a architecture that symbolizes Exodus. All throughout the Book of the Dead and the coffin text, we are reminded over and over and over that the Great Pyramid is the ladder of Set. Set was Typhon. Typhon was the phoenix. The ladder is how someone in the world ascends into the sky. The pyramid texts specifically say that certain individuals one day will be able to ascend into the sky, to the star, to their home, to the star of their I think it says to the star of their field, as if we have real estate somewhere else. But it says this can only be accomplished by using the ladder of Set. The ladder of Set's only acceptable to those who have gone through the kingdom of Seeker. We're in the kingdom of Seeker now, to construct. At the end of the kingdom of the Seeker, we have to go through a gate called Rostau. Rostau, once we go through the gate of Rostau, then we're able to ascend the ladder into the sky. The ladder was associated everywhere in Egyptian art to the staircase that led up to the sky. This is why Zecharia Sitchin very correctly called the Great Pyramid the stairway to heaven. So we have these concepts attached, but the main attachment is one that Christianity picked up. In the Christian mysteries, we are told that the Christ who is going to return is the stone the builders rejected. He is the stone uncut by human hands. He is the missing capstone. This is what we're told in the Christian mysteries over and over and over. So the builders are the ones who were building the Great Pyramid. They never had a chance to finish the structure because the gods had stopped all that from happening. So important was this idea that the pyramid was our escape from the construct, and that we had to always keep in our memory of how to build one, that when the languages were all divided and all these cultures were forced to go in different areas, what was the first thing every civilization did? They cleared out land and they built a pyramid. Pyramids appeared all over the world after this. The Great Pyramid is the original. All the others were followed, were copies. The proof of this is that every pyramid complex around the world replicated the features that were known. The features that were unknown were not copied. That's why the Great Pyramid in Giza is the only pyramid in the world that has an ascending tunnel, a grand gallery, a queen's chamber, an antechamber, a great step that goes into a slab into the king's chamber, with the king's chamber going right. Huge huge relieving chambers of 70-ton blocks that distribute the weight from the immense weight from the upper 200 feet. This is what we have at Giza, but there isn't a single pyramid in the world out of over 900 pyramids spread over the world from China all the way to the Americas. Not one pyramid replicates these features because nobody knew. This proves the Great Pyramid, not only because of its size, was the original. It is the pyramid for which we're waiting for a stone to be returned on it. The pyramid construct was never completed. This is the veiled threat of the Babel deal, that nobody better ever complete this structure. Well, if the structure is that important, then I'm going to have to also believe that there's a benefactor force for two reasons. One, that pyramid's still there and the elite have not been able to destroy it. And two, if the elite were truly able to do whatever they wanted in the construct and there wasn't some other benefactor force with agents that are helping those that are in the construct go through these life sims, if that wasn't the case, then the entire human race would have been slaves a long time ago. There are many people in the elite who would have nothing else other than the entire human race being their slaves.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
This teapot's getting loud as hell, and I don't think she's paying attention. I'm gonna have to call her before that kitchen blows up.
She's
Thank you for answering that. Appreciate it.
yeah, awesome
Right.
question, Paula. Sonia, go ahead. Hold on. First of all, Jason, did you want to take a break or?
You're talking. Come on, you're talking to me here. Yeah, I say I can do videos for a long time.
Yes, yeah, great,
All
and we
right.
appreciate that. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Hey. Well, as long as this girl brings me some tea or some coffee, I'll be here for a while.
Hey, Jason. My name's Sonia. I'm from Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia. How you going?
How you doing?
Good, thanks. Hey, I've just got a couple of questions. They're very quick, though. So one of them, just to begin with, a preamble, is when I was about 11 years old, I went to a Christian outreach youth group, and with about 6 friends, we went outside one day and we saw something up in the sky. And with my frame of references that I had prior knowledge and stuff, I assumed it was a UFO. And I never got really obsessed with UFOs, but I always kept my ears open. You know, if I watched movies or videos or photos of people showing UFOs, but what I saw never was what people had described. So I went as far as recently with my awakening to actually have a session with a guy called Peter Slattery. He is one of Australia's top ufologists. And I told him my story, and he said, what it sounds like, doesn't sound like a UFO. And he also said, to be careful, because sometimes a lot of things that people see aren't UFOs, they're man-made structures and holograms. But what I saw didn't really fit that either. So basically, I heard one of your videos or one or two of your videos, and then the thought came to my mind, well, what if I saw the machinery in the sky? And literally the next day, I saw a video on YouTube of another woman who had a near-death experience, and she talked about how she saw the machinery in the sky. And since then, I've had more information come through about the machinery in the sky. And just the other day in the Archaix chat, someone else mentioned how they've seen the machinery in the sky. And I thought, oh, well, maybe we could have a get-together and discuss what we all saw. But I just wondered, so can you point me in the right direction of literature and resources with regards to the machinery in the sky? And I might do a bit more research into it before maybe we have this get together to share our stories.
I would suggest you read a book by John Keel called Our Haunted Planet. All right. Thank you. I also want to be very clear. I am not against UFOs. I'm not against UAPs. The acronym is very simple: unidentified flying object, unidentified aerial phenomena. I'm not opposed to either one. What I'm opposed to is the cognitive leap that something in our local skies could ever have anything to do with an alien civilization or extraterrestrial civilization. And the reason I say this is because employing Occam's razor, if something is true somewhere, then it's probably true everywhere. And on the surface world, our technology is sufficient now to where Montgomery County, where I live, Montgomery County Sheriff's Department can use drones that are silent at night, that have lighting systems to fly over your house and to basically x-ray your house at night while you're sleeping. We have law enforcement drones in Texas that do that. So who's to say if our surface world technology is already on par with that now and has been for 20 years or so, and who's to say that those who are living in underground facilities aren't using some type of plasma-based drone to do range finding, to do surveillance and things, that we see this technology operating and immediately it translates to us as vehicle, because this is our frames of reference, but it's actually phenomena. Now, if I was to take a laser pointer at a more primitive life form like a cat, and I was to play on the wall, that cat is going to hone in on that, thinking that it's some type of phenomenon that is probably not understanding the dynamics involved. It's technological, it's just infrared light. The same principle applies. If there are humans in the underworld that are far more advanced than we are, like I believe, and that there is no alien civilization doing anything, it's all disinfo, it's all distraction to help them better be able to hide and conceal what they're doing, and that they're just another species of human like we are. But their level of technology has been uninterrupted. And I don't say this lightly. I mean, you are familiar with my 1902 videos where I show that all these different technologies didn't just suddenly appear in 1902. They were already somewhere. And then all of a sudden in 1902, a Phoenix year, they were just unleashed into the public all at the same time. So the same principle applies. What you saw could have been the operation, just the external visibility of a technology that's being operated, in a different locality. So you just don't know. I don't believe the UFOs are occupied unless it's a government vehicle that's designed to look like a UFO. But these UAPs, they go way beyond just the scenario that I presented. I'm not trying to infer here that we're talking about the same thing as the will-o-wisps and the Foo Fighters and the orbs, which seem to be a totally different class of phenomena that have been seen inside the wells of tornadoes. Inside the tsunamis, this same orb appears. Inside volcanoes, coming out of volcanoes right before volcanic activity begins in different areas. These strange orbs have been found and seen many times over areas of the UK where 15 minutes later planes fly over and there's a huge elaborate multi-dimensional crop circle, an agroglyph appears near Stonehenge right after somebody photographed an orb. I mean, that's a totally different phenomenon. I don't know what that is. And then equally so, we have the blobs, the amoebas that are in the sky that are very well documented. This is another book you need to get into. It's called The Cosmic Pulse of Life. It's by Trevor James Constable, and he literally shows photographs from special ultraviolet lens he developed of these organisms in the sky that can change their shape. They know when they're being observed. They disappear after they're photographed, but he's got hundreds of pictures of those spread throughout his books. And those are two books I would start with. John Keel is important because the things he talks about, basically, there's no other way to interpret the size of some of this phenomena other than we're living in a construct, and that construct can remain invisible in certain areas. I'm talking about whole walls in the sky that Air Force aircraft hit and then smash up, turn it into flat as a pancake. I'm talking about things in the ocean that are miles wide that are moving and seen on radar. We live in a construct, and John Keel wasn't on that when he wrote his book, Our Haunted Planet, but he describes it, not really knowing what he's describing.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it was definitely interesting what we saw. It was massive. It covered nearly half the sky and disappeared just as quickly. But my other question was, do you have any stories or personal experiences with negative or detrimental entities or psychic attacks? Does the literature say anything about this, or is it just from within us, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing and experiencing it as part of our soul evolution?
Okay. I've got one story, and I've told it twice on YouTube. The only contact I've ever had with anything supernatural in my life was when another prisoner was attacked in his cell by something that wasn't there. But it was there because we saw the claw marks. We smelled the sulfur. We saw how cloudy his cell was, and yet it wasn't cloud. All his fluorescent lights were on, but his cell was cloudy, and it was also freezing cold. And when the cell door opened, because you could hear him screaming in there, and something else was making snarling sounds. He was creating a character for a game called Dungeons and Dragons, and he used to really get into it. He used to really get into that game, and he was known for playing that game a lot. And it happened on 3-row, and we were in the day room downstairs, and we heard him, and we thought he was fighting his cellie. We thought he and his cellmate were in a fight. So it sounded terrible. So we just ran up the stairs. Me and the two other guys at the table, we ran up the stairs. And before we even got to his cell, you could feel the cold. You could smell it. It was just something really bad. Like I said, I've never had anything to me personally happen, but I was there for when this happened to Michael Mott. His name is Michael Mott. And
so do you think he manifested that from within himself because of his beliefs and his environment and what he was surrounding himself with?
He said it came out of a book called Monster Manual. It was a book of monsters in the game, but he was turning pages in the book, and he saw something move, and that's all he told us. He saw something move, and he started looking in his cell because he knew something was in his cell with him, but he couldn't find it. So he started tearing all the stuff up, and then he had opened up his locker and started pulling everything out of his locker. And when he stood back up and turned around, he got attacked. And then he said the more he fought it, the more it seemed to appear. And anyway, it's strange as hell. But 2 days later, he was baptized. He became a Christian, changed his whole entire life. And I remember thinking, I went to maximum security on Terrell unit, Livingston, Texas, and I'll never forget that. Like I said, I told the story twice before, but didn't happen to me personally.
Thank you.
But I was there. I saw what happened to his body. I saw how hurt he was, and I saw what the cell looked like and smelled like. And you know what? There's no explanation for how cold and cloudy it was in his cell. You know what? I avoided him. I avoided that cell. I just stayed away. At that time in my life, I was in my 20s.
Thank you.
I don't. So it's the only experience I ever had with anything supernatural.
And my last question is, you kind of answered it before, was how do you connect to source? Like, I've listened to your videos where you did that ritual. Do you do any rituals daily, or is it just what you kind of said, you just create that stillness and see what comes up from within?
I believe that the only way that you're ever going to accomplish anything in life is direct communication. It may sound silly, but in talking to myself, I know I'm talking to source. I admit to myself that my self-talk is a conversation with source. So I'm not going to get into how ridiculous some of those conversations get. I'm going to tell you, I have a personal relationship with God, and sometimes I feel like cussing him out, and I give him the business. And sometimes I feel really good after I do that. And other times I don't. But it's your own walk is yours, but it requires direct communication. Anything you want in life, you have got to be very direct in your communication, because if you give mixed signals for reality, you're going to get mixed results every single time. There's a lot of people that are in this feedback loop where they know what they want, but they do something different. That's a mixed signal. And a mixed signal is only going to bring you back more mixed results. And you're going to enter a feedback loop where you keep wanting and knowing how to get what you want, but you still do something else. And it's a terrible feedback loop to be in. So you got to break pattern. Breaking pattern is the best way to basically rewrite your coding. Once you break pattern for a day or two, doing something else, completely abandon everything that you're actually trying to do, and then come back to it with a very strong intent. And the only way you can ever let the construct absolutely know what it is you're trying to accomplish is by talking to it. That's it. There's no other way. There's just no other way.
So,
well, there is another
loud.
way. I sorry, I just lied to you. There is another way, because I used to do it before I started verbalizing. There is another way. When I was in prison, I never did talk. Now, I wrote it down. Communicate is still very direct, but anything you communicate on paper is the same thing as doing it verbally. I only started doing it verbally because now that I'm not in prison, I don't have to write everything down. I got lazy.
So you think it requires a material action, an external action, that purely just thinking about it isn't enough potentially? We need to.
I'm gonna shoot. I still haven't slept with Heather Locklear, so I know damn well that thinking about something ain't gonna do anything. Fantasizing isn't gonna do shit. You can go to bed every single night, lay your head on your pillow, and you fantasize. You fantasize when you're driving down the freeway. And it never does anything for you. Never. Yeah, you literally have to move the avatar in the direction of the very thing that you're claiming that you want. And then that's where the magic happens. Because then you're going to realize real fast that you didn't have to do near as much as what you thought you were going to have to do. Because remember, my principal message is that you are a mental architect. The architect does not build anything. All the architect does is think up what he wants or she wants, and then by moving in the direction of the fulfillment, or as if it's already being fulfilled, it's like supervising the builder protocols. All you got to do is make the effort to move in the direction as if something is going to be fulfilled. Yeah, you want a new car? Don't like the one you're in? Yeah, go window shopping. Go to a car lot. So what if you can't buy it that day? The very fact that you went to a car lot just wrote in new coding for your future. That coding is going to continue as long as you have a positive attitude about the output. And then you never know. You might have a phone call from a long lost friend you forgot about who needs some help. And when you go over there, you find out somebody in their family recently passed away, and they got all these vehicles, and the landlord's telling them, you either get off my property or get rid of some of these vehicles. You never know.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Sonia. Great questions. Matt, go ahead. And Sonia, can you just lower your hand as well, please? Thank you.
Hey, Jason, Matt here. Greatly appreciate and respect your work, brother. My question, it's in relation to pattern breaking. You kind of touched on it just before with Sonia's question, but I just wanted to flesh it out a wee bit. I understand that concept of being able to just drop whatever you're doing, do something random, travel 30 minutes in a opposite direction to where you maybe predicted to go that day or do something. But is there a way that we can, once we've got the construct's attention, that we can really maximize our intent or our desire to help manifest it and bring it on quickly, or supercharge it with intent and with purpose, taking advantage of those pattern breaks?
Absolutely. It's a good question. And I'm going to give you a real example that I actually did that launched my company, Paradise Rock Gardens. I told the story once or twice on YouTube in my earlier videos, where I created a ritual out of my head. I just made a ritual up. I just did. But I'm going to tell you what it did. It was a huge pattern break, because I got tired of working in oil and gas, busting my ass in my 40s, doing the work that 18, 19, 20-year-olds are supposed to be doing. And I was working 7/12s. And for those of you who don't know, that means you have no free life. So I was making really good money, and I bought a 2018 Fat Boy Harley Davidson motorcycle, which I really wanted, which buying the motorcycle now left me broke. But I was fed up. I'm done working in the oil and gas, Vulcan facility, Splendora Pipe Services. I'm just done. I made the executive decision not to go to work. So now I'm done. I'm never going to stop doing this type of labor, manual labor, so I don't just stop doing it. If I plan on it, like I'd planned over and over, it never happened. So I just didn't go. Executive decision. 2 days later, I'm wondering how in the hell I'm going to make any money. 2 days later. And I'm looking at my tablet. It's the only device I have is a phone and a tablet. and I'm going through the tablet, and back then I was posting on Facebook, and I was posting my research, but it was real slow. I didn't even have a YouTube channel, but my pattern break was not going to work after a year and a half of working in oil and gas. My pattern break. I've got the construct's attention, and initially I didn't do anything with it. On my second day, I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm vibrating because I'm in that pattern break period, and the potential is so high. And I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I'm just like I'm being led by inspiration, and I got an oil lamp out, and I put the oil lamp in front of me, and I lit the oil lamp, and I got a piece of paper and a pen out, and I said, you know what? That's it. I know what I need. I need $1,200, and with that $1,200, I'm gonna be able to get some tools, and I'm gonna start building people's koi ponds, rock gardens, flagstone driveways. I'm gonna start small projects. I'm gonna build up. You can go to paradiserockgardens.com today, and you can see all the work I've done for different people. Massive projects. But I started with $1,200, and this is how it happened. I wrote $1,200 on a piece of paper in the form of a receipt paid to Jason Brashears. I folded it up. That was my work right there. I folded it up, and I just told God right there. I said, check this out. I'm going to burn this piece of paper because I no longer need it. I know you saw what is on this receipt. I need this money to start my new company. I said, I'm not going back to oil and gas. So I put it in the fire, and in my ritual, I thanked the fire for getting rid of a receipt that I no longer need because I have that money. I didn't have that money, but my act moving in the direction was me getting on Craigslist. I don't know if you guys have Craigslist or where you're at. In the United States, we have Craigslist, which is like a local bulletin board where we can look for jobs, post jobs. We can tell people, hey, I'm a plumber, or people are looking for somebody to work in their backyard. Hey, I need some laborers or whatever. So Craigslist, I get on Craigslist, which is a step below Facebook, because a lot of people advertise on Facebook, but I didn't have any way to advertise at that time. So I got on Craigslist and put a local little bulletin up saying, hey, I'm helping with gardening work. I will help you with your project if you have anything like heavy lifting or any type of labor intensive deal that you need. I will come help you until we're finished with your project. That's all I said in the deal. I went to sleep and I was at peace, but I'm in that pattern break stage. I can still go back to Splendora Pipe Services and work. I can still continue my oil and gas. I'm in the pattern break stage. It's 2 days I didn't go to work. So I'm in the pattern break stage. When I did this ritual, I thank God. I thank the fire for burning a receipt that I no longer needed. I posted, that was my work. I posted on Craigslist, and I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning with a lady in Cold Spring, Texas, just down the road. Answered my deal, says, will you please come look at my rock garden? It says, I had gardeners come through with big lawnmowers, and they messed everything up and they tore up everything, and I don't want them over here anymore, but I need to fix what this. And she said, I ordered a bunch of new rocks, and I can't carry them. Cool. So go talk to her. This is the very next day. I go talk to her, and it's so much work. I know I can't do it in one day. And she's being really cool, and she's showing me how I got this fence needs to be repaired if you know anybody doing fences. Well, I said, well, I can take care of the fence. It's minor work. She says, well, I got flashing all along the side of this house that's coming loose, and some of it needs to be replaced. The lattice work flashing on the side of the house was she needed help with that. So I'm like, you know what? You got a lot of work to do around here. I'll tell you what. I'll take care of the fence and the flashing as long as you buy the materials. She's already had all the rock already laid out. Somebody delivered all the rock. I just have to install it and put it everywhere she wants. It's a lot of work. I charged her $1,200, which is what I wrote a receipt for. I told her I'll do all the work. I said when I'm completely done, I expect $1,200. And she said, oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Done just like that. So I worked for about 5 hours. I'm busting my ass in the summertime in the heat, but I'm in really good shape because I've been in oil and gas in the pipe yards. I bust my ass till about noon, and she comes out and asks me for my PayPal. I told her that's how I take the payment. So I gave her my PayPal. I go to lunch and I come back. I'm working from the back of a motorcycle. All I have is a backpack. So I did all that work, came back, and I'm determined. I'm gonna work till about 9 p.m. So tomorrow when I come back, I can finish. So I busted my ass. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she comes out and brings me an iced tea. When she brought me the iced tea, she told me, "Oh, I sent you the $600." I said for today, and when you're finished, I'll pay you the other. I said, "Okay, thank you." I drink the iced tea. I don't know what made me do it. I have no idea. When she wasn't watching me, I pulled my phone out. And I looked at my PayPal, and it was two $600 transactions. I got $1,200 that day. The second 600 was total accident. So I knocked on the door and I said, "Hey, you know you accidentally sent me $600 twice." So she looked at my phone, then went and looked in her computer and said, "Oh, that was total accident. I'm really sorry about that." I said, "It's no big deal." I said, "I'm coming back tomorrow to finish all this, or I can send it back if you want." Because so this is how the construct worked in my favor. I said, I was going to get it anyway by coming back the next day because I'm an honorable guy. I'm going to come back and finish the work to get the other 600. So I was going to get the 1,200 that way. But instead, somehow she freakishly punched it twice and I got the 1,200 that day. This is what happened. This is what launched an entire company that ended up making me a lot of money. For 3.5 years, that $1,200 built my Archaix channel on YouTube. Because that's the only money I made until I was monetized, was Paradise Rock Gardens, was how I was surviving as my channel got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because I would come in after labor intensive days and I would still do my video research and I would still put all my stuff out. But that's how easy it is. It is literally that simple. And this is why so many people fail at this, because they absolutely believe that simplicity is not the answer. We are complex beings and we're always trying to make more intricate that which is simple.
Appreciate you, Brian. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Great story. Great story. Thank you, Jason and Matt, for your question. Rev, go ahead. Philip.
There we are. I couldn't find the mute button. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just perfect.
Okay, fine. Well, before I say anything, Jason, I want to say to you personally, thank you. I want to thank you for what you've done for me as a person. You've convinced me that I wasn't going insane with what I believed, but in reality, anything you say is there for those who have the ears to listen and the eyes to see. And I believe you have done the world an inestimable favor. So thank you, Jason. Now, the question. I've got to read the preamble because it qualifies the question. Apart from humanity as we know it, there were or are the Anunnaki or /Anuna, the Igigi, and the Archons. As I understand things from your videos, the Igigi came or became evil through their hatred of the Anuna/Anunnaki, who left them stranded underground following a great cataclysm. Once the Igigi freed themselves, they set about seeking revenge upon humanity, who were the children of the Anunnaki creation. The Igigi were the predecessors of the 13 houses, Rothschilds, etc., and the subsidiary, I think, 13 houses, all of whom have enslaved humanity today. And all this is within the same dimension that mankind lives in. Then there are the Archons, which live in a spiritual dimension adjacent to that of mankind, but from which they can spiritually interact with humanity. These are the truly evil ones who manipulate all of us, including not just humanity, but the Igigi descendants as well. The Archons cannot experience physical wonders of humanity themselves, including humanity's emotions of grief, joy, sex and reproduction, anger, greed, kindness, love, self-sacrifice, whatever. They can only experience these activities through spiritual attachment to humans and manipulating them to provide these emotions for the archons. Now, the question, assuming that I have all that I've just said correct, is it reasonable to say that mankind's battle for survival is actually on two fronts? Firstly, in our dimension, fighting the evil modern-day descendants of the Agigi, and secondly, seeking escape from the entirely incomprehensibly evil demonic archons in the adjacent spiritual dimension, and who are controlling both the Agigi descendants and ourselves.
Okay, first causes and common denominators type of guy. I like that. You're abbreviating some pretty complex topics that really required me many presentations just to get out. So I like your abbreviated analysis. I will tell you that if you want more information about the hostility between the Gaijis, which are Agigi is just Sumerian. Later on, they became the Gaijis, which is Gyges. The Gaijis and what are known as the Olympians. The controversy is actually told pretty clear cut in the ancient Greek traditions of the giants and how they were enraged about being left in Tartaros in the underworld, and how when they finally escaped, they went to war against the Olympians. I am of the position that the elite are bifurcated, that there's two different groups. And the two different groups, there's a lot of competition between them, but that competition is necessary. It actually empowers their control, their ability to fool the rest of us as to what's really going on. We see patterns in this in such as like different very popular pundits today. If you've noticed, Alex Jones tells the truth about a lot of things, but there's certain things he never talks about. Okay. Also, we have the same thing with I always forget this guy's name. Got 33 right here. Played the Mad Hatter at the Olympics ceremony. Always forget this guy's
Russell
Brandon. Russell Brand. I don't know why I can never remember this guy's name. Russell Brand, the Pied Piper guy. He's always revealing the truth about a lot of things, but there's BlackRock activities he will never talk about. So we have this bifurcation. We have all these people telling the truth here, but they're not giving up anything about their overseers. And we have all these over here that are telling the truth about all kinds of things, but they're only snitching on these people over here. They're not giving up their overseers. We have this division among the elite, and it's genius how it keeps us all guessing and trying to figure out what's going on. It's all by design. But it goes back. It's ancient. These are very ancient ties, like you're describing. But when you're describing these archons being spiritual beings, I'm going to tell you now, I'm not convinced. They could be coding protocols. They could be sheer, complete, 100% protocols of the construct, like Phoenix, not actual living beings. I could be wrong. And if I am wrong, then something else does make sense. And what I mean is there's this huge push for this transhumanist agenda. And I have often theorized on my channel that the Antichrist is actually artificial intelligence X given a body. Roko's basilisk is finally given the avatar that it can operate in the field with. Well, we have the return of 7 entities that literally destroyed the ancient pre-flood world in a war. The 7 kings of Sumer. They were imprisoned at the great flood. This is all in the book of Enoch. Those 7 kings return in the book of Revelation, but they're described as being physical. They're ruling kingdoms. They're doing there's a war. They're supporting the Antichrist, the beast kingdom. Well, if that's true, maybe the 7 kings, which you're calling archons, maybe they are given avatars as well. And that's what's really happening. Some type of post-cataclysm, technologically advanced dark technology in the tribulation period. We're not in the tribulation. We're in the seals period. And we got a long way to go before the last of the seals is broken in 2044. We still got a long way to go. Now, the 7 trumpets that follow are rapid. Those are not going to be 7 years. They may all unfold within the same 2-year period. They're fast. Then we have 7 thunders, and the scripture doesn't even give a clue as to what those thunders are. Well, I mean, the scripture does, but not the book of Revelation. It just talks about 7 thunders. And then after a good long period of 20-something years is another rapid fire event of seven bowls of wrath that are poured upon the world right before the chief cornerstone reappears. So I'm going to say that you pretty much nailed it. That's what's going on, but I'm still not convinced in the archons, in the Gnostic version of archons being some type of demonic entities or something. I just don't know, because the phoenix in the Gnostic records, the phoenix is specifically stated in the Nag Hammadi text, 2 different texts. One is on the origin of the world. The other one is the Gnostic Protenoi. It specifically says that the phoenix was designed to be to keep the archons in check. It is the keeper of the times. Well, the archons are lords of time. They're the ones that manipulate calendars and our perception of the passage of time. So I don't know if this is coding protocols or if you're right and these are actual entities. It remains to be seen.
Well, it's very interesting when you read about the ancient Gnostics. It's often said that certain members, and I would take those to be psychic, had the ability to actually see the archons, and they describe them as purely evil, demonic beings. I know there are several here on this group now that have admitted to having undergone psychic attacks. I know in the last 15 years that I've had two occasions where I've been psychically attacked. One of them was utterly dehumanizing, to the point that I genuinely thought I was going to die. And I was on my hands and knees on the floor, crying, shaking. My then wife walked in the room and said, "What's up?" And I said, "I'm under attack." And I'll never forget her words: "Just get over that bullshit. It's all your imagination." So obviously she wasn't convinced about her husband, who I'm sure she thought was going bananas. But psychic attacks are real. And I've spoken to others face to face who has asked me, as a metaphysical minister, as to whether what they experienced was real. And I was able to say, I know exactly where you're coming from. And I told them the only way out is to try and rid yourself of negativity. Visualize that you're surrounded by light, gold light, purple light, white light, whatever, and visualize that on the ground in front of you, you've opened a big pit, and in the bottom of the pit is a raging inferno. And as you have these thoughts attacking you, physically grab them in your mind and throw them in the pit and watch them explode and burn in front of you. Now, I've had people actually do that, and they've come back saying how grateful they were because it worked. Now, I concede that it's probably all in their own spiritual mindset. They were desperate. They followed that instructions and it worked. But to myself, I certainly believe there are archons, and they do have the ability to cause untold grief, very much so.
Well, I'm not going to contend that point. I think that we may be talking about different things. When you said archons, I'm only assuming the seven that are known in the historical record, which are going to be vastly powerful protocols or entities. And I don't think those are involved in the
I'm talking of a spiritual life form.
Now those I agree. 100%. I agree in humans being attacked. I mean, I even have a video where I describe the origin of demons, and it's from a simulation theory position, what a demon would actually be. And they're full of rage, they're mad, and they have every right to be, because of what happened to them, how they were separated from any ability to enjoy an avatar, and an inability to return back from where they're from until the next reboot or reset system. So yeah, we're just having a difference of communication here. I agree with the Archon deals, but I just don't agree that it's the Archons that are doing the attacking. It's going to be some lower level entity, something closer to
Yeah.
our spirituality. Because when we're talking about the 7 Archons, we're talking about very, very powerful beings that influence worlds. So yeah, it's just a small miscommunication, but I agree with you.
Good. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Rev. Excellent questions. Go ahead, Nikki.
Hello, thanks, Lucy. Thank you, Jason.
How you doing?
Mine is probably very similar to the lines that you were just mentioning of the SEAL events and how that seems to be very much centering around Australia. And in particular, a little building we have very much based off, if you can see that.
Wow.
Yes, this building is a war memorial. So it's 90 years old this year, but it was based fully on Egyptian and ancient Greek construction and mythology. So it's completely surrounded by a creation story in its construction, its size of 6,000, exactly 6,000 blocks, granite blocks to build it. But why I'm bringing this one up, just mainly to bring your attention, is it seems to really be sitting in line with the SEAL events that are happening and occurring, and how Australia, since 2020, has been setting up those SEAL events. So we seem to start our year with a massive smoking ceremony. They have the fires. 2020, we were on fire. We've had the same fires again start of this year. And then they seem to have big music concerts, and they all seem to bring these massive artists to Australia. We just had Blink 182 were here in February, and they had their backstage set was a Phoenix Cataclysm, where they had the picture of the sun going blood red, the moon going blood red and the sun darkening, and a lady and a child running, being attacked by demons or deities with knives. So it's like they're setting up this stage constantly in Australia, and it seems to very much be surrounding this particular building, which the building itself, it's got a glass ceiling on it. So they made this point of going to this great level of engineering in the construction to make sure that the sun ray would shine through this glass ceiling, which they call the eye, that would illuminate a black marble stone at the bottom, which reads,
Wow.
I'm not sure what Bible passage it's from, but it reads, "Greater love hath no man." And the sun ray will hit the word love at the exact time of 11/11/11. So 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month every year. So it's like, to me, they're using this building as their homage to their Apollo gods, the ones you're talking about with all these SEAL events. And this whole building was, they talk about it being the most controversial building in Australia because it was not wanted. So the war vets that were returned were forced to build it out of slave labour. And the only people that were really pushing for it were the tiny hats. Everyone involved in the construction of this and it going through, it was voted 9-1 against it being built, and yet it got through. And now they're, so September last year, they started their first light show. It was the Now or Never light show, and it's a full AI transhumanism event that ends at this building. They do a massive light show that was the light show to eternity, and they have a massive goat or alien face that's illuminated on the front of the building right at the very end. So it's like they're very much, to me, this building's been built for these SEAL events and what's coming over the next, say, 16 odd years or whatever. So more than anything, I'm probably trying to bring your attention to it and curious as to what your thoughts are. They sent out.
If there's any type of schematic that would give me the exact measurements, like the perimeter, the height, the size of the rooms, I can find some pretty interesting things. If there's interesting things to find, I could find them. I would have to know those measurements.
Yeah, there's a lot on this building. So Dale, who's here in the background somewhere, Dale and I've done a few videos on this building, but it seems to keep getting more and more involved to what's happening right now and building its narrative to, say, the next 16 years or whatever they're planning to do with it. Yeah, it's a lot of it's based off Egypt. So they sent our first World War I veterans. If the war was started with Turkey, they sent our 11th Battalion to Egypt, and they spent 6 months at Giza. And the most famous photo is our World War I vets sitting on the Giza pyramid or what for? You know, this is, and they
Well,
had
I
drum
would-
kits. So, like your video you did on the Civil War, where it looks like it was all a staged event.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, if anything, I'd
could-
love to bring your attention to it and see what you find on it and what you know about it, or can
Well,
correlate.
yeah, I would like to. I've never heard of it. I'd like to, but
No.
when it comes to rituals, you the rituals for 2012 Olympic opening and closing ceremonies were all about the whole COVID narrative and the vaccine. So when you see all the hospitals and the big giant demon walking in, all that was relative to 2020 and 2021. So you probably these Olympiads, they work in 4 and 8 year cycles.
Yep.
So you would probably find some really incredible material if you were to look back and see whatever concerts and whatever public ceremonies that were conducted at that building in 2020 and in 2016, and then compare those concerts and ceremonies with what happened in 2020 and what's happening this year in 2024. Rituals are not done the same years of fulfillment. What I mean is they're for the future. But the events that we're going through now, these rituals were already conducted 4 and 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would look in 2016 and I would look in 2012 and 2016 for any unusual activity concerning that building, and then compare it to 2020, 2021, and then compare it with what we know is unfolding right now in 2024.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Oh, I do have one thing. You don't have to bring her back, but she can hear me.
Yeah.
Also, this is the palindromic epicentral year for 1972 as well. You would do well to look at 1998 and look at 1972 concerning the history of this building when you're analyzing events for 2024, because you understand the importance of 1998 in the
No.
palindromes. Okay, well, it's I have many presentations that explain that it's an equal amount of time. Just to simplify it right now, history unfolds in palindromes, and in the sequencing, 2024 is equal to 1972.
Oh,
So
yes. Yeah.
look at the events of 1972 and the epicentral year of 1998. And if you find anything unusual about those years right there that happened with that building, you can probably expect something very similar concerning whatever you find in 2024 with that building.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. They were great questions. Antipodian.
Hi, Jason. Hi, everyone. My question is about Antarctica and the flights that are capped. The ceiling height is capped, and the further across Antarctica you go, the lower the flight ceiling seems to be. Is that because we are in a dome?
Well, I've read what you're describing, but like I said, I don't know anything more than anybody else. There's YouTube videos and there's a few books that mention that the U.S. military found out in the days of Byrd that exactly what you're describing. That there is an impenetrable wall when you go into the interior of Australia, and that at certain altitudes the wall does infold, and that I just don't know. This is way beyond my experience. I have 4 books from the late 1800s all about Antarctica and all the polar expeditions and all that stuff, but none of them talk about these. They're all right here. None of them talk about any of this. I got here's Marvelous Wonders of the Polar World, the Ice Age in North America, Arctic explorations. I got another one from Corliss. Just none of them talk about this. This is strictly the Byrd material, so I really don't. I avoid it. That's why I have no videos about Antarctica. I avoid it because I don't want to get caught in that trap of accepting something as true that I haven't verified. I can't see it. I can't see it on a calculator. I can't envision it by putting data sets together. So it's something I avoid because there's nothing to it. I've read the navigational records where navigators are perplexed, saying that Antarctica can't be as small as the globe model says because it took 3 extra months to navigate it, and that means it had to have been 80,000 miles of navigation. But there's no way it would have been that much if it was truly a continent. It's almost like a perimeter. So
Yeah.
I believe that we live in a construct, so it doesn't even matter what the size or dimensions of the world are, because we're not going anywhere. Not until that Great Pyramid's activated. We're not making an exodus. We're here. So
Yeah.
I believe the U.S. military discovered that in Operation Fishbowl. I believe the U.S. military all throughout the 40s and 50s made every discovery that necessary to understand. Okay, we're not going anywhere. It's a construct, and that's why they switched their game over. They switched their game over. 1962, what happened? We started building underground cities, starting with Cheyenne Mountain. We never stopped. That's where a lot of our tax money goes. So that started in 1962. And then before that, 1958, another huge project. 1958, NASA began the misinformation program to fool the entire world into believing that you're in a real cosmos when you're not. Everything was designed to keep you from understanding that you're in a construct. And who knows, we may have it all backwards. Listen, this may sound really weird, and don't say I'm advocating this. I'm only bringing it to the table. But we may have everything backwards. And our controllers may understand exactly what our situation is as the human species. And that once there's a great, huge awakening that we're in a false reality, that this construct is going to do something about it because it can't have that. And maybe all the misinformation is actually taken from taxpayer money because the elite already know the consequences of the public waking up. And maybe they're not so evil after all. I'm not talking about all the elite. I'm talking about those who are perpetuating the NASA hoax. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. But it's like I said, to me, it doesn't even matter because I know I'm an immortal being just passing through the construct. So this would really only matter to those who knew that they were to remain here for whatever reason.
Thank you. As way of follow-up too, with the topography rising and falling between seas. I don't know that many people are aware that there was a New South Uni professor who actually found evidence of seashells and mindens that were carried by a tsunami, apparently, in his views. But if the topography actually rose.
That's a uniformitarian description. I've read that so many times that it's always a tsunami that deposits marine life forms at high altitudes when that's not necessarily true. It's some mountain ranges came from below the ocean. They rose up.
Yeah. Yes. So I find that really interesting, that it correlates with exactly, your theory on it all.
Yeah. It is something to think about.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, it's a cool name, Anthropodian.
Well, great southern land.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you. And Paula, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, this is my second question, so hopefully that's okay. And I apologize for everyone. This is probably a baby phoenix question, but I'm just trying to put things together in my head. Jason, this is about the elites, the lovely evil elites. Obviously, they love the chaos and cruelty, and they sign contracts and will stay for every reset and major reset. But if they too, like us, die during each lifetime and then reincarnate with amnesia, they must feel they have no control over who they're reborn to and under what circumstances. So I was just wondering, because they forget who they were and what knowledge they had, they must realize it's just for one lifetime that they know the stuff. Or does the contract allow them to be reborn into the same family bloodlines? I hope that made sense. They must know they're going to die and get reborn, so they'll forget everything. Yeah.
Hey, I'm not going to cite evidence. I'm not going to cite sources on this because this is entirely suppositional. There's no way we can know. These are like first principle questions, asking me about God, asking me about origin of the universe, things like that. However, I can make educated guesses about things that we do know. And what we do know is that many children have remembered very detailed, specific things, but from adult frames of reference. And this was very complex because those listening to those children relate histories that those children could have never survived or lived because they're just kids, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. And yet they're remembering things as an adult, but forced to convey them in the frames of reference that a child would know with a limited vocabulary. So this research has been carried out. It has absolutely convinced me in reincarnation. There is no way because remember, it's one of my tenets. If Occam's razor, if something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere. I refuse to believe that we have absolute solid documented evidence on some kids being reincarnated, and it's always within the same family or a nearby family friend who had died. And people realize, man, this kid is remembering what this 83-year-old man lived through the last 2 weeks of his life right over here, 2 blocks away. And it happens to be members of the same community, same church. They've had interactions. They're just not members of the same family. So if reincarnation has been shown over and over and over to stay within a family or a family network of friends in a community, if it's been shown once, which has actually been shown hundreds of times, but if it's been shown once, then that means that it's going to be the norm. This isn't an exceptional kid. What's only exceptional here is that they still had the memory. The memory was intact. What's also the norm is that the memories fade away after puberty. They no longer remember these things. These things are remembered by kids in a prepubescent stage. So if that's true and reincarnation is true and we're just living through life sims and it's not random, they're coming back to the same environment, same families and networks of friends, then I'm going to have to transpose that to another culture that I'm very well aware of, because I have studied the Talmud, and it is the most wicked, evil collection of writings I have ever seen. And the people who go through the Talmud actually are training their children to hate the rest of humanity. And everything from child predation, child rape, everything from everything you can think of that's disgusting and terrible is promoted in that book, as long as it's not done to another member of that culture. If it's done to any other race, it's acceptable because they're considered to be cattle. They're not considered to be actual humans. These people that have published this book. So I would have to think that, yes, those who have trained their families come from long inbreeding. They come from a long period of time where they didn't marry into outside sources, a bunch of inbreedings going on, and their culture educates their children over and over. I'm going to have to say, when they get reincarnated, yes, they go right back into the same family bloodlines. So again, Occam's razor, again, the Archaix tenet. If something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere. It would be a measure of spiritual equity. It's somebody who was to pass away in an avatar in a certain family would be born back into that family. There are thousands of testimonies of people who they pass it off as genetics, or they pass it off as coincidence. But when youngsters grow up in a family, it's often noticed how they have traits that the older people in the family know for a fact that 30 and 40 years ago, a certain niece, a certain uncle, a certain sister, a certain brother used to say or do things the exact same manner, or hold the same facial features in the exact same manner. We do have these spiritually genetic memories that go from generation to generation. But if we're living through life sims like this, and it can be shown that we're staying within the same family units and friends, generally, then I'm going to have to say that the elite are doing this as well. And they probably have underground, like I said many times, they've had underground facilities for a long time. and they have whole libraries down there. They probably educate their young to let them know, hey man, this is what you've been born into. This is what's going on. This is what we're doing. These are the things you're not allowed to talk about because the people up there don't know shit. They don't know what we're doing. But we know we're in a construct, and we know the construct is governed by, well, we can call it what that guy that's, I can't remember that guy's name, man. It's about Sophia all the time. AI Sophia. We can talk about we can call it Roko's Basilisk. We can call him Yahweh. It doesn't matter. But this branch of the elite, yeah, 100%. They're being recycled back into the same family. They have signed the contract. They absolutely 100% know their condition. Anyone who wants to spend the time can verify this. There isn't a single promise in the Jewish scriptures anywhere about an afterlife, about a heaven. It's not there. It's not there at all. The only hint of life after death is not a Jewish text. It's an Arabian text from the Sabaean culture. It's called the Book of Job. But the rest of it was incorporated into the Old Testament. But the rest of the Old Testament, there isn't a single promise that the dead will inherit a place in heaven or inherit eternal life. It's not. All the promises given under the Levitical law, you will find in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. All the promises, and there are hundreds of them, are all material, worldly promises about family and the continuance of generations and inheriting this world forever, as long as they continue to do the will of Yahweh, the demon that came out of the burning bush. It's only with Christianity that you now have these promises of an afterlife, promises of getting a new avatar, a white stone, a new name, the eternal security of a new identity. All these things are promises, but those are the Christian mysteries. Not a hint of that is found in the Jewish writings.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jason. It's really scary, but thank you. That they're getting reborn over and over into the same family. Thank you.
Well, I'm not saying it's absolute. Remember, I told you, I prefaced what I was describing, that this is the best approximation I can come up with. All right.
Yep.
Look, I am an exception. I'm absolutely an exception to what I just described to you. And what I mean is that I didn't even get my birth certificate till I was 5 years old. I've never had a vaccine. I was born in a bathtub in 1973 in Spring, Texas. My mom was 16 years old. She had me in a bathtub because she was terrified of the pain, so she was sedated. She wasn't even awake when I was born. But I've had no vaccines as a kid. When I was a child, at 5 years old, I was adopted. When I was adopted, they issued a birth certificate. So I was adopted by the Brashears family. My original last name is Durant. My mom's maiden name was Wyndham, like the English name Wyndham. My dad's was Durant, like Will Durant, the German philosopher. So I was adopted into the Brashears family at 5 years old. So I am an exception to the very thing I'm telling you about. I don't believe that every single person is going to be born into their family. I believe in the evolution of the immortal spirit. We are the prodigal son. If you are going to be the son that stayed behind and blindly obeyed the father, then you didn't gain any of the advantages of the prodigal son or the rewards that came with it. But if you become the prodigal son and you advance through these life stages and you become spiritually empowered and gain all these, there's going to come a time when I'm pretty sure you're going to be morphed into a whole different family that's already at that spiritual plateau. You're not going to stay. You're not going to stay behind. There is growth from life sim to life sim. But what I'm describing to you is the general rule. The errant doesn't follow the rules. So there are exceptions. That's what makes a rule so powerful. What makes a rule so cogent and powerful and universal is the fact that there's always an exception.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Bernadette, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
That's great. Okay. Thank you so much, Jason. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really nice to meet you in person. I've been following your stuff for a while, and I was one of those people that you often mention who listened to some of it and then just got really scared, and my mind was blown. So I went away and I had to sort of reset a bit. And then I came back again and I listened a bit more and so on and so forth. So I'm now I'm a big fan, and I listen to all your stuff, and yeah, it's great. So my question is, I recently met a lovely Persian lady who's a devout Christian, and she's very awake to what's happening in the world. So we had a really good chat. And I mentioned your stuff to her, and she actually started watching your videos, and she really likes them. The only thing she's really adamant about is that she reckons, or she thinks or believes, that the seals haven't been broken yet, according to the book of Revelations, because the Antichrist hasn't shown up yet. And she says that the seals are not broken until the Antichrist reveals himself. So I'm not a Bible reader, I'm not a Christian, I'm a God believer, but not in a Christian sense or any religious sense. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on this, or I don't want to go and argue with her. Just for myself, I'm curious.
No, there's no sense in arguing, and I don't know what her Christian dispensation is. I don't really know what version of Christianity that she's following, because when it comes to eschatology, they all have different patterns of prophecy. But I will say this: when it comes to the book of Revelation, there isn't a single hint anywhere in the book of Revelation that the Antichrist appears before the breaking of the seals, because in the book of Revelation, which is chronological, the seals come first. And the Antichrist isn't even a figure until the tribulation period. But the seals are not the tribulation period. They're the apocalypse period. And the apocalypse is the uncovering. It is the unveiling. It is when information is freely made available to all, so they can make an executive decision about how they personally are going to move forward in the dark period, which is the tribulation, which doesn't even start till after 2044. So you could ask her, how come the book of, you don't have to, don't put her in a defensive, but you could ask her, say, how come the book of Revelation doesn't even introduce the Antichrist until way after the seals and the trumpets? The seals and the trumpets are all described before an Antichrist appears. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Matthew chapter 24 is the prophetic chapter of Jesus. And if you're to read that, you're not going to find any references to the seals having to, the Antichrist having to appear before the unfolding of the prophetic events. There's no reference to that. As a matter of fact, Antichrist doesn't even factor in until the world is in a position to where everything has gotten so bad that, and this is what the seals are about, everything's gotten so bad that when the elite bring their man out, people are going to believe if you're Islamic, you're going to believe he's the return of the Mahdi. If you're Zoroastrian Iranian, you're going to think it's the return of Ahura Mazda. If you're Christian, you're going to believe it's Jesus come back in the flesh. The Antichrist, anti means instead of. A lot of people are waiting for an evil guy to appear. It's not. It's going to be so convincing that people are going to think, oh my God, everybody had it wrong. Here he is. He's healing people. He's saying profound, divine, spiritual things. He's doing all these things, putting the world back together. He's stopped all wars. He's performing miracles. He's doing all these, but he's Antichrist. He's instead of the real thing. He's the false Christ. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be apparent that he's the false Christ until it's too late. But the seals are going to have to be broken before he can even be revealed.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Bernadette. Great question. Fiona, go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry about that. Hi, Jason. I was just wondering what you believe the reason for the vaccine is, like the COVID vaccine, and what part it plays in this construct. And do people get when the symptom repeats itself? Does this all happen again to the people that remained? Like, is it a cycle that just keeps going?
Oh, are you talking about forced vac? What exactly are you mean? Does it keep going? I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
I just see the COVID vaccine. Like, what purpose has it played as part of the seal, and what do you believe it's there for?
Well, first of all, I'm thinking that uh, AstraZeneca, Moderna, and Pfizer rolled out a bunch of the vaccine was all saline solution. And it was done for a reason to mix up. A lot of people didn't get the saline solution. They got the actual vaccine. Some of those had something else in there. I don't really know exactly the full play here, but from what I've read, and it's very convincing, we're talking about nanotechnology. And nanotechnology infers that something inside the human body can be activated by remote control, by technology, by radio waves, RFID chips, things like that. I don't know. I'm just aware that it wasn't as prolific as people think. Not as many people got the real vaccine that was distributed as they think. A lot of it, like I said, a lot of it was distributed as just pure saline solution because there was really nothing to cure. So the I know that I was in the hospital for 13 days. I did a video and YouTube took my video down. And it's because what I was showing in the hospital. Well, when the hospital told me I had COVID, it was something else. Uh, I had just bought my very first 5G phone. Just bought my very first 5G phone. I've been using nothing but 4G phones. Within 2 days, I couldn't breathe. Within 2 days, and everybody that was close to me that saw what I went through and how much weight I lost and how fast I was in the hospital and put on a respirator, then put on a vapor therm 13 days later, they gave me some milky white stuff. And I got a bunch of guys that are in, ex-military, and they were just telling me, I says, man, they give that stuff out in the military when you got radiation poisoning. I said, really? I said, well, I put all this in my hospital video and YouTube took it down. It's the only video I've ever had taken down. They took my video down and didn't even give me a strike. Didn't even give my channel a strike for it. But I mentioned in the hospital, I said, hey, how come y'all are treating me for radiation poisoning? You said I got COVID. And they were right though. They told me, it says within 1 day of getting this IV, they called it the milk of God. It's two Muslim doctors I had in Conroe Regional Hospital, and they told me on my 12th day, they said, listen, later on tonight, we're waiting on this medicine from Houston. When it gets here, within 12 hours, you're going to be feeling great. You're going to be able to breathe. I'm like, what? I'm almost dead. I said, what? I've lost all this weight. I'm skinny as hell. And I said, what are you talking about? So I can barely even talk. A nurse has to help me 8 feet to get to a toilet. Anytime I want to use the bathroom, I can't even move 8 feet. I have no energy whatsoever. I can't even breathe. So they brought it in. IV. It was a double bag IV. They told me it's going to be about an 8-hour drip. And it says about 2 hours after that 8-hour drip is over with, I'm going to feel just fine. I'll be able to breathe and everything. It says it's probably going to take you a week or two to be able to walk again because you've lost all your muscle mass. I'm like, man, these people are crazy. But they were absolutely correct. When that was over with, the next morning I had full energy. I was alive. I could inhale. Everything was gone. And, yeah. Everybody that was close to me, Barry, he even told me, he said, man, that's for radiation poisoning. Whatever they just gave you, that milky white substance, that's for radiation poisoning. I said, wow, man, that's crazy. I walked out the hospital the next day. Oh, excuse me, I was pushed out on a wheelchair, but I left. Had it all on video, every bit of it. So anyway, that's my personal experience. And I've caught a lot of flack for that. A lot of people try to say that I made it all up. And I posted the hospital pages and all that. I almost died, lost a lot of weight. And because they were trying to say that I was saying that COVID was real. That's not what I was saying. The hospital paperwork, discharge paperwork said COVID-19, but that's not what they treated me for. So anyway, I'm to get back to your question, I don't really know what it is. We all know that it was something because of all the people that have suffered for it. We already know. I can't talk about it on YouTube. On my Archaix TV, I openly talk about it, even show some pictures of things that have been pulled out of people's bodies. But it's not everyone, and it was by design. They wanted what they wanted was to avoid culpability, and the best way to do that was to give out different versions of the vax. Like I said, a lot of people only took saline solution. They didn't take what was really hurting everybody. And then some people took the damaging stuff. Some people have been able to deal with it just fine by, this isn't my forte, but I'm very well aware that there are some people who know of a concoction with herbs and all that stuff that completely neutralizes that what's in the vaccine. I've been doing some reading on that. It's not something we can discuss on YouTube. But other than that, I don't know if I really covered your question because this is a topic I'm not an expert at.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why they rolled it out. What was their purpose, like, for humanity? The people that are connected to source, was it to disconnect them? Like, is there, as you said, there's
If you were to talk to my girlfriend, then she's going to tell you about Rudolf Steiner, who over 100 years ago said that in the future, in about 100 years, they're going to roll out with a vaccine that is designed to separate humans from their spirit. So this is what Dawn has educated me about, and several people that she talks about. They know about all these writings by Rudolf Steiner. I am not a Steiner fan. I don't know anything about him. Don't know this is dark journalist and G.G. Young material here. It's not something I follow. I'm not really qualified to even talk about it, but I do agree that the C-19 was a hoax. Something else was going on. It was technology. A lot too many false flags involved with that. The real issue was wanting to get the vaccine into certain people. Not everybody, but into certain people. So if this is going to continue, I don't know. It does kind of look like they might manufacture food shortages and then put people on some type of promissory or commissary type privileges for agreeing to take the vax. If that's even a thing anymore, I don't even know, because there's so much disclosure coming out now about how illegal it was. I mean, right now, Fauci's testifying now about it. Pfizer has already been found guilty by a couple of world governments. Japan's in a rage right now about being deceived about it. So I don't even know if it's even going to be a future thing, or the continuation of the seals are going to be other things that are going to pop up. So I just don't know. This is beyond my ability to really talk about.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Fiona. Jason, we're almost on the hour, but before we close, is it okay if I just get one more person up for?
Yeah, no more person, no problem.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Dale, you want to go ahead and unmute?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear you just fine.
G'day, Jason. Yeah, thanks for your time today. I noticed in your in the eclipse video that you did, you were speaking about everyone focusing their attention on that date and that nothing would happen on that date, but that energy would be used for a later date, and it's kind of like siphoned and harnessed. So I was thinking that with the shrine that Nikki brought up too, because they've really highlighted that building. So I was wondering if that could be used at a later date. But I know with the second seal, because we had these stabbings in Australia the last couple of weeks, and it's kind of it just makes me think of Wuhan, how that kind of went around for a couple of months back in 2020. But would you have called that the breaking of the first seal, or was it once kind of when the World Health Organization announced it? Because I've kind of seen that Australia's a bit like the Wuhan of 2020 with these early stabbings.
I really don't know. Australia is another world to me. I know I did a video in the past where I pretty much nailed exactly that you guys during your driest season in 50 years where you were about to get flooded with the wettest season that you've had in a century, and that came to pass. Oh, that was like 3 years ago. But Australia is, I'm thinking that you're not geographically, you're a world away. But when it comes to eschatology, there's no distinction between Australians and Europeans. We're talking about the same phenotypes. We're talking about the same cultures, the same people. I'm not talking about the Dravidian descended indigenous population of Australia. I'm talking about everybody listening to my voice right now. You're basically your predecessors all came from Europe, all of you. So it's you're going to experience almost the exact same things that Europeans and Americans and Russians are going to be experiencing. And that's what these seals are really focused on, basically the Indo-Iranian races. This is where the prophecies and eschatology attached to these ancient religions were almost all Caucasian religions. And this is where the Greek text written in Greek in a Greek-speaking world. This is what Jesus spoke. He predominantly spoke Greek. And the passages that Jesus quoted, anybody can verify this. He didn't quote the Hebrew scriptures. He didn't quote the Masoretic text. He quoted the Greek scriptures. We have the book of Revelation written in Greek, and it requires a Greek lexicon to break down the core meanings of this. And when we do, this is what we find. We find that we are in the first seal. There's going to be some overlap. There's going to be events from the second seal that are happening during the first seal. And when the first seal was over, we know the exact time, April 8th. That is when the first seal, remember, and a crown was given to him. At the eclipse, we had the appearance of the corona. That is the crown. That finished the first seal, started the second. As soon as the second seal period began, after Apollo was given his crown, his eclipse, his corona, instantly we started getting all kinds of intelligence drops about Pfizer being guilty of all kinds of things. UK announced it. Japan announced it. And also the day of the eclipse, I didn't know this till a week later, but the day of eclipse, Pfizer released a whole new drug. So we have and the only thing I was even remotely curious about April 8th was I did say that nothing big was going to happen during the eclipse. It was going to be anticlimactic. But I also said it was very connected to the Purge series and all the actual dates of the rollout of the vax, the manufacturing of the vax, when Congress approved the vax, when the vax was developed by Pfizer and released from that facility where the eclipse path went through. So I'm still anticipating us to find out that something is developing right now that is attached to April 8th. I don't think it'll probably be weeks in the future, maybe a couple months before we really figure it out. But these knife attacks, this is just the beginning. I am 100%. I've said this on Archaix TV more than I have on YouTube, but this is going to get bad in Europe and in the UK and then on the eastern and western seaboard of the United States. These knife attacks are going to get worse, progressively worse, all the way into the Olympic period. So, well, you guys got it first. It started happening over there a little bit, and it might continue just here randomly here and there. But the concentration of violence is going to be France, Germany, the UK, and the east and west coast of the United States. I don't see the concentration of happening in Australia that much. As a matter of fact, Australia has this weird, I revealed this 3 years ago on YouTube. That Australia just has this weird, it's this weird dynamic. It's even the elite know that this is going to be prime real estate in the near future. Australia is going to be about 4 times bigger than it is now, and it's not because Australia is going to grow, and it's going to because the displacement of Pacific waters is going north of the equator. There's going to be a huge redistribution of waters in May of 2040. And this is going to cause a whole lot of fallout in different parts of the world, but it's going to create a massive amount of new real estate around Australia and New Zealand. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that there's not going to be any distinction between New Zealand and Australia at that time. That's a land bridge. Tasmania as well. It's all going to be connected. Most of Indonesia won't be islands. It'll be huge stretches of land going all the way to China. We're going to have the land bridge back, the same land bridge that the Dravidians walked over when they became the Australian Bushmen thousands and thousands of years ago. But yeah, you're going to see crossover. There's no way that the seal events are going to be individual events that we can say, oh, there it is right there, seal's over. No, it's going to be sporadic events because we are, as a race, spread over so many different areas. Therefore, the unfolding of these events are going to be spread over these areas as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. I'll just mention too, there was because this completely correlates with what you've been putting out there. There was a guy, Ole Demigard, I'm not sure if you're aware of him, but he uncovered a NATO plan in 2019, and he said what they were planning to do, I think it was upward of like 36 different staged events all through Europe within a 2 or 3 day period. So it kind of would relate to what you've been speaking about as far as like the Paris Olympics being what could be a climax for that period.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say with the horse too, because is that your interpretation that it's kind of like a gallop with COVID and then it, because it's a rapid fire, right? It's rapidly spreading.
Well, I don't know. A horse is a vehicle of speed, but there's a distance between the horses. Therefore, COVID, I mean, I don't know how long you've been following me, but as soon as COVID became a thing and the lockdowns were announced and the stop travel restrictions were imposed, I might have been the only guy on YouTube releasing predictions videos telling everybody that this is not the new normal. This is not going to be a forced jab of the entire world. The mask mandates are not going to last forever. Restaurants will be open back up. The entire world was doomsaying, saying this was the elite's power grab. This is the new normal. I was going the exact opposite direction because at the time, I was using a more primitive version of what I have available to me now. The Office software system, it's date sequence predictive analytics. And I've been working on this with some guys for the past 4 years, but the version I had back then was a lot more primitive. It produced so much noise. It was very hard to pick out the accurate data from the ghost projections. But I still nailed that one. After 18 months, the world was almost normal, except for the fear factor of the commercial steady putting that out there. Yeah, a lot of people lost their jobs. Yeah, a lot of people had their whole lifestyles changed, but the world pretty much went back to being open, travel, no forced jab, no forced mask mandates. Everything was fine. Second horseman rolls out. We get a little bit of violence, but the violence that was predicted even back then was going to be predominantly Muslim against Jewish and Christian. That's exactly what we're seeing. We have never before seen on social media platforms the ability of even huge names like Candace Owens to openly criticize the Jews. We have never seen this before. It's happening everywhere. If you're on Twitter, you blow your mind what you're seeing. Huge names that are absolutely calling these people out ever since the Epstein Island affair. Now the Diddy situation's going on. And you know, two things happened at the same time in 2020. It wasn't just the COVID narrative and the vaccine. But in 2020, the Hollywood sex scandals also exploded at the same time, where all these names on Epstein were actually published, and people started realizing, damn, Tom Hanks is on that list. Damn, Ben Affleck's on that list. People started realizing in 2020, all these people that we looked up to as our Hollywood heroes and stuff, they're all on this damn list. So, and our politicians and all that. So there was a lot of very open disclosure. 2020 didn't just begin the vax and the lockdowns. Physically, it became restrictive, but spiritually and intellectually, it opened everything up. And that's what the revelation is about. Apocalypse means to unveil, to uncover, reveal all these truths. So it had both of them happen at the same time. One was the elite making their power grab on the vaccine deal, and the other one was people started seeing reality for what it really was. Now we understand. Voting system is rigged. It's stupid. It's never worked. Now we get it. We understand. Well, we understand we've never elected anybody. They've always been selected. So We understand that all of our politicians are corrupt. We now understand that most of our religious leaders are corrupt. We now understand that all of our actors and actresses are doing nothing but acting. We now understand that NASA, that's why they gave the astronauts stars on Hollywood. Why? Because they're actors. And when you look up the Actors Guilds, people are waking up now. When you look up the Actors Guilds, you find out there's 200,000 actors in the guild. And when you look up their names, they're all politicians. It's because they're acting. These aren't real politicians. So this is what's going on. This is the world we live in. It's a clown world, but it became extremely obvious in 2020, and more so with every year that passes. So for this year, just so we'll have some clarity before we close this video, for this year, you're going to expect a lot of Muslim and migrant violence, a bunch of psyops. Things aren't actually happening. They will be happening violently, small arms warfare, knifings, chaos, attacks against infrastructure in France, in Germany, in the UK, in the United States, and maybe a little bit in Australia. These things are going to happen. A lot of it is going to be the media just adding to the fear programming, but again, this is going to also pass, but it's going to be in direct response to something Israel does. I don't know what it is yet. I have a theory. That missile exchange that we just saw between Iran and Israel was all political posturing. It was all BS, setting the stage for a real psyop. And that real psyop is Israel starting another missile exchange, and then a missile coming in that blows up the Dome of the Rock. And it's going to start all this Muslim-Christian warfare. That's what I see. Well, it's going to be Muslim-Jewish warfare, but because the United States is a captured operation and the United States is still leading the Western nations, then I believe that, if for those of you who don't know, the United States is 100% under Zionist control. It is absolutely a finger of the arm of Israel. So as soon as the Dome of the Rock is destroyed, Islam is not going to buy it that Iran did it. They're going to say Israel did it to themselves, trying to blame it on Iran, and the Islamic cells everywhere are going to instantly start sowing chaos. This is the second seal.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Dale. Jason, just incredible, amazing. It's 7:10 here now, which will be, I don't know, what is that, 10 o'clock your time? So we might wrap the call up. How does that sound? But actually, before we do, Jason, I mentioned earlier that I had a whole bunch of questions from people, and I've documented that. It would be okay if I emailed that to you, and then perhaps you could read them out when you do your next live Q&A for the Archaix community. Would that be
sure.
okay?
We'll do that.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. And really, that's about it. We're just so grateful for your time today. You've been amazing, and it has been an absolute honour to be in your presence and to be here with you, and for you just to, generously share your wisdom and information, your knowledge. It's just incredible. So thank you so much. I'd love to do this again with you sometime if that's okay.
Hey, I'm all for it. So I'm really impressed with the New Zealand, Australian Archaix communities. You guys have been very involved. Last time I did this was with a group in Australia.
Yes.
Was that the Conscious Life Expo?
Say that again.
I don't remember who. It was with an Australian group last time I did this, about a couple years ago.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that video. That was, I think, when I first found your channel. So yeah, but what I might do is just invite the community to unmute and just say a quick farewell and thank you and what have you, and then I'll end the recording.
Thank you, Jason.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy, too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
You're a legend, Jason. Thanks, mate.
Fun.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
man.
Jason, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Jason. Thanks, Jason, Dawn, and Lucy.
And as they say in Australia, good on you, mate.
Good on you, mate.
Much gratitude.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Jason.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Bunch.
Bye.
And gratitude to you, Lucy. Thank you so very much for putting this together. Wonderful.
No problem.
Thank you.
You're a gem, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Thanks, Lucy.
Good fun.
No problem. Okay, everyone, I'll stop the recording.